it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. This is Big Daddy Dave, and this is Farm Sim Talk, a show where we get to interview other creators within the Farm Sim community. And today I'm very excited for my next guest. By day, a mild-mannered YouTuber. By night, a law enforcement officer who keeps our streets safe. I want to give a very special shout out and welcome to Farmer Cop. Farmer Cop, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on here. I'm super excited about it. So yeah.
Oh, I'm excited as well. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Before we get going, do you want to give yourself any kind of shout outs where they can find you at?
Yeah. So most of you may know me if you have seen my channel before. I do farming simulator content on my main channel, which is called Farmer Cop, and then I have a second channel called Gamer Cop. So if you like what you see on the Farmer Cop channel and you want to see me play a different game, you can check that one out. But both those links are down below.
Absolutely. Yeah, both of them are linked in the description, so check them out there if you need to. Do you want to give any shout outs before we get going?
Yeah. So like there's a lot of. I mean, I could go on. I'm sure forever. Um, I feel like the people I've made as like friends in this have been pretty tremendous doing this. I want to say a big thank you to like DJ Go Ham Gaming. DJ's become one of my closest friends through doing this, and then also a big shout out to Mr. Silly P, who was actually the inspiration for why I started the channel. But we can talk more about that later. Also, obviously, the guys like the Farm Sim guy and Virtual Farmer, both great friends of mine, and even some smaller channels like Matt, Brennan, Mr. T-Bone, Silver Eagle, all the different Shanty Boys guys. Those guys are absolutely fantastic, and I've done a lot of work with them. And Rusty Money Gaming and Farm Sim Snow. There's the last couple I can think of right off the top of my head. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry. You guys are all awesome. So.
Well, that's fantastic. So let's go ahead and get into our first segment here. I call it Digging Up Dirt. This is a segment where we get to know who you are as an individual. So starting out, well, we know that you have a career outside of Farming Simulator and your other gaming channel. Do you want to kind of give us a rundown of what that is?
Yeah. So my day or night or evening job, depending on what shift I'm on, is I work full time as a police officer. That's probably the number one question I get on my channel is actually, oh, are you actually a real police officer? And I am. I'm not a retired police officer. I still am full functioning. Well, once my shoulder's fixed, but I am a full time police officer. So that's what I do outside of YouTube. That's my day job.
And being a full-time officer, what made you decide to start your channel?
So I actually started my channel during COVID, and I know there's a lot of channels that probably started there. This I think the 23rd of this month is my 5 years doing YouTube. But I started it during COVID for a couple of reasons. I was on graveyard at the time, and they moved us to 12-hour shifts. So I would work 4 days on, then I'd have 4 days off, then 3 days on, 3 days off. So I had a lot of extra time off, and at that time it was hard for me to transition between like daytime and nighttime. So if I was on night shift, which I was at that time, I would just stay up all night. So what I was doing when I was staying up all night was I was just playing Farm Sim, just in my office at home. And so I was like, oh, I should like watch some YouTube videos or something. So I found Mr. Silly P and started watching Mr. Silly P while I just as like background noise on my second monitor while I did just played Farming Simulator. And then after a while, I was like, I could probably make a video. And so I just started my channel, didn't expect anything of it, and then that's kind of how it all got started. Just had a lot of free time during COVID.
I gotcha. And then I noticed that you're wearing a sling. Do you want to tell us what happened there?
Yeah, so as you can imagine in my job as a police officer, there is some danger to it. This is from being a police officer. I had arrested someone for assaulting someone, and they were cooperative until we got back to the jail. And then once at the jail, it was just me and them, and they decided to fight me. So I got in this long fight. The fight lasted about 15 minutes. And over the course of that, like other officers started showing up to help, thankfully. But eventually, we got him. We got him under control and everything like that. But in the meantime, I didn't think anything. I didn't notice it at the time. But like my arm hurt for a couple days after that. And then I eventually ended up finding out I had torn something in my shoulder, and so I actually got shoulder surgery January 31st of this year for that. So I had to wear the sling for at least another 2 weeks.
Oh wow. Well, I know that I do this for every single, military, police officer, first responder. Number one, thank you for everything that you do, keeping your local area safe. You do an incredibly important job, and among many, many others out there, certainly appreciate what it is that you do. Putting your life and body on the line, for the people out there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm absolutely humbled and honored to be able to do the job that I do. So, yeah, thank you.
So, tell me, what are some of your hobbies? Are you into hiking, fishing, sports?
I don't watch sports, which I think, and it's not that I don't like sports. I think I would easily be able to get into like watching quite a few sports probably. I just never got into it because I was always busy doing other things. So I've just decided I'm not going to do that because I can't afford the time for it. Though I probably would enjoy it. I don't mind doing outdoor stuff like hiking and stuff like that. I've been hunting before. I haven't been in a while. I used to fish sometimes, but I haven't done that in a while either. Main hobbies I have now are obviously I like to play video games. I think that's no secret. So that's probably my main hobby, and then I also enjoy. I play music, so I play electric bass and I play like upright bass or acoustic bass, and so I do that like for my church on Sundays and my church band. So I do a lot of stuff like that. I also enjoy like board games. I enjoy having people over and playing some board games and stuff like that. I really like board games. But yeah, those are my main hobbies. I have quite a few pieces of woodworking equipment in my garage, and I enjoy doing woodworking. However, I just don't have a lot of time for it, so I feel like most of my projects are just if I need to build something for something around the house. But I also do enjoy doing that. And of course, I do enjoy. I have a collection of firearms, and I do enjoy going out and like shooting recreationally or doing target shooting and stuff like that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, considering the line of work you're in, that certainly does add up. I can.
Yeah,
I don't have to be a detective for that one. But so you mentioned board games. Is there anyone in particular that you're into?
I play quite a few. I don't mind like the I want to say like the stereotypical board games like Monopoly and stuff like that. I like to play Risk, but I haven't found victims in a long time to play that with me because that obviously, if you know, Risk is quite a drawn out game. But I'm all for it. I play. I feel like I play a lot of times. I'll play like Settlers of Catan with people, or Catan, depending on some people get very picky about the pronunciation. But I have different versions of that I like to play with my friends with the different expansions and stuff. So I feel like that's one of our kind of go-tos because everyone knows how to play it and it's a lot of fun. But yeah.
Okay. So what kind of books, movies, and music are you into?
Books, I don't read a ton. I'll read some books about like police work and stuff like that sometimes. There's a really good book by, I know the author, but I can't think of the name of it. It's by Dr. Gil Martin. It's about like, he was a police officer, and then became a psychiatrist after that, and like wrote a book on like surviving a career in law enforcement. It might be like, that might be the name of it, but something like that. That's a really good book. Recommend that. Movies and TV, I mean, I'll watch the whole gambit. I enjoy some like Disney movies, and I also like and I say that as someone who doesn't have kids, but I still enjoy watching them. And I also enjoy like movies like John Wick and stuff like that. John Wick series is of course a classic. And then cop movies. I like a lot of cop movies as well. I haven't seen some of the important ones that I need to watch, but I feel like I keep going back to the same ones when I have time. TV shows, though, that's where I shine. I've watched The Office a couple times. It's one of my favorite shows. Yeah, that's a good one. And also Brooklyn. Yeah, it's so good. I think I probably watched it. I think I'm watching it right now for the fourth time all the way through, working my way through it. But it's just a good way to get something to put on and unwind after a day of work or whatever. I also really like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I've been through that show a couple times. And then I feel like my other go-to show is Parks and Rec. It reminds me of, since it's a government-based thing, it reminds me of some of the same struggles they have with government work. Reminds me of my job, so it's kind of funny. But yeah.
I could definitely see that. So, just out of curiosity, whenever I try to explain The Office to somebody, it oftentimes comes out very kind of blah. Like it's a very hard show to describe, but
It is.
it's a really good show. Like it's a real classic. You basically describe it as, oh hey, it's a bunch of people in an office and they're really goofy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so much more than that.
It's so much better than that too. Like that. And I know some people I've recommended it to will like get like partway through the first season and then they'll stop. And I tell them, no, you got to make it through the first season. The first season's important for like some character building and stuff like that, but the second season's where that show starts to really come alive. And I mean, I say that as someone who I don't mind watching the first season, but yeah, it's you just gotta commit to it and run with it. I don't think I've ever met anyone that's committed to watching the whole show that has come out and been like, I wish I didn't do that.
No, absolutely. And what about music? What kind of music are you into?
I listen to a lot of like rock and country music. Those are probably the two main genres that I listen to. Yeah,
Okay.
I switch back. I have like a rock playlist and a country music playlist on my like Spotify, and I feel like those are the two I switch back and forth. And I also listen to like some Christian music to like prep for like whatever we're doing at church and stuff like that. But those are kind of my three genres probably.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So, you mentioned country and rock. What kind of bands are you into? Like, what would you say is your favorite country and rock artists?
Oh, that's very tough. Rock, hmm, I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I feel like if you listen to my rock playlist, like it's like probably 12 different genres of rock within one playlist.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to say that I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and you think that that's the only thing I like. I like all sorts of different things. I like Matchbox 20. I enjoy Matchbox 20, which is a completely different style to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I have some Metallica on there, of course. Like even some like things like Bon Jovi, things like that. Like all sorts of different things going on. When it comes to country, also the same thing. Like it's all over the place. Some of it's like older school stuff, and some of it's like more of the new stuff. I really like Garth Brooks. I also have been listening to a lot of what's his name? I could list songs. He wrote Small Town USA and
Oh, Jason Aldean.
no, not him. He might have done something similar to it. Maybe he didn't write it. Maybe it was a cover. I
Oh,
could be wrong too. I can't remember his name. I'm gonna just pull it up real quick on my phone. It'll take me about 12 seconds.
no.
And
Oh, no. I know exactly who you're talking about now.
I
Oh,
recently went to a this is like last year. I went to a Cody Johnson concert and he actually opened for him, and he's way too big to be opening for people. Um, Justin Moore.
Justin Moore.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
That was the
Yes.
guy. That was what I was thinking of. But yeah, I
Uh,
like a lot of his stuff as well. There it is. Whiskey Creek Farms in the chat said Justin Moore. Thanks, Whiskey Creek.
thank you, whiskey. So, what would you say are some of the oddest, weirdest, or more obscure movies, TV shows, and music that you've seen?
I feel like I in general am very like uncultured in terms of like most popular pop culture movies I haven't seen. I just haven't. I don't. I'm not against people that are into them. I just don't think I've cared that much, so I haven't been super into them. Um, I think of like maybe like ones that are like more odd, but also probably still very mainstream. Is like I think it's called Inception. That one's kind
Hmm.
of a unique movie. Really good movie though. That's probably one of the stranger things I've seen, and it's probably not even that strange. But yeah, that's probably it right there.
No, I can definitely see how that would be considered like a strange movie, going multiple layers deep into dreams and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I'll give you that one.
Okay, I'll take that. That might be the one I have to go with then.
So, what would you consider if you were no longer able to produce content for one reason or another? What would you do as like an alternative?
Oh man, that'd be really tough. I I think I would probably I think I'd be more focused on like my regular job. I'd probably pick up more overtime shifts and stuff like that and do more like police work wise. I'm someone who like I struggle to like relax. Like I have to be constantly working and doing something. So it's difficult for me to relax. So I would probably end up, and that's what I did honestly before COVID hit as well. One of the reasons I could also start my channel was we used to, our agency is fairly busy. So it used to be before COVID, if you wanted to come to work, you could kind of come to work. So I would often work 60 to 70 hours a week because we got paid really good in terms of like overtime. But when COVID hit, that went away. Like our overtime was just gone. And so I was like, wow, I have a lot of free time. But yeah, I think I would just probably focus more on that. Maybe try to get into some more specialty positions and stuff at work. I kind of almost a lot of times view it like the opposite way. Like I think content creation is nice because it's like a good fallback in case like a really bad injury or something happens and I can't go back into doing police work. It's always a nice thing to have as kind of a fallback if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And with the kind of job that you do, I mean, it's certainly, possible that, some kind of, injury or something happens to where you have a long period of time, a long recovery, and having that kind of on the back burner, or a kind of ace up the sleeve kind of thing is certainly a bonus.
Right. Yeah.
So would you say that you more or less kind of fell into the YouTube space?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. When I started my channel, I didn't expect that. I didn't think anyone would watch it. Like I thought maybe I'd be lucky to have a few people watch, and I was shocked when I hit 100 subscribers. I was even more shocked when I hit 1,000. Like just the growth has been I think it's been a lot of luck probably as well, but I would not have imagined if you told me 5 years ago that I was getting ready to start a YouTube channel that would be where it's at today. I would have told you you're crazy.
And what do you think is something that you're not very good at, but others would disagree with you?
Oh, that's a tough one. Um, I honestly like this might I know it's very YouTube focused, but like I just am not I don't feel like I'm that good at making videos. People seem to like them, but like I don't do anything like crazy fancy. So I don't know what it is. Like I'm my editing's very basic. My equipment's very basic. I don't do anything fancy. So I would say that would probably be one that people are like, "Hey, your videos are great." Even like I hear like every time I hear like the Farm Sim guy or DJ Goham or someone like that like is really good at editing and putting together really high quality content. Anytime they say I did good on a video, I'm like, "You guys are crazy. Like look at your own videos. They're way better than mine." But that'd probably be my thing, I'd say.
Well, and me personally, I've been a follower of yours for quite some time. You're one of the, I'd say probably five or so people that I would say I attribute to my getting into the space. You mentioned Mr. Sealy P earlier, and I would also include him as one of mine as well, as like the main person. But you're definitely in the top five, most certainly. And one of the things that I've observed over the years with your content is the kind of authenticity that you bring. Like it's very kind of, approachable and very consumable, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, I think it's important to be yourself. Um, I think people can read through it, even through a video. Like they can tell if you are fake. I think they can tell that pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of family dynamic do you have at home?
So for me, I actually do I do have two roommates that are really good friends of mine that I've known for a long time. Um, One of them is getting ready to get married, so he'll move out, and then I'll just have the one roommate. But for me, I'm single, no kids. It's just me, and then I occasionally run into my two roommates who also work and have very busy lives. So we cross paths here and there. But I mean, my studio in my house is the most of the basement is set up for that. So like I usually am just kind of downstairs in my cave when I'm home and doing my thing. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Okay. And so not having a wife and kids at home kind of helps free up a little bit of extra time, but you still have to, worry about, long hours at work and all that stuff. How do you create the proper balance between the YouTube life and the home and work life?
Um, I feel like it's difficult, and I recognize that obviously people that have like that are married and have kids, like they're adding a whole nother realm of or a whole nother realm of responsibility. Um, and so for me, I think it's easier because, like you said, like I don't, I don't have any kids I have to make sure are cared for and things like that. And being single, like it's just my time is my own and I can do whatever I want with it. But even with that, like it still is difficult. There's times if you look back through like the history of my channel where like I'm just very absent. Like you'll see me post like a video a week or something like that. And in those times, like I'm struggling to get that one video out because whenever that happens, that's when kind of work has taken priority, like my regular job. And the people that are subscribed to my channel are super kind and say, take care of business and then come back. We're happy to have you whenever you're back. So I feel like it is difficult to balance because I work 4 10s normally right now when I am normally on patrol, and you might be working every 4 months. We switch shifts, so every 4 months we're on a new shift, whether it be day shift, night shift, or swing shift. So, and we're not allowed to be, even if you have the most seniority in our department, you're not allowed to be on day shift for the whole year. You can only do 8 months a day shift. Then you have to go to one of the night shifts for at least 4 months, which is good, I think. But yeah, so I feel like I usually work 4 months a day shift every year, and usually 4 months a night shift and 4 months of swing shift. So it rotates, and so every time that happens, I got to figure out when I'm going to make my videos again. I got to figure out when I'm going to do my live streams. And not only does our shift change, the days off I have every week change. So like I might one shift rotation, I might have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. The next one I might have Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It changes every time, so you never really know what you're going to get. And then I also try, since I recognize most of my coworkers have are at least married and have kids. A lot of them have kids, so if they want to go on vacation or something like that, I try to pick up their shifts as much as possible to help them out. Um, every Christmas, I work 14 hours Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and that's me working a double shift, so I'm able to cover day shift and swing shift. That way, two people can take the day off um, to go spend time with their family on each of those days. So I try to do stuff like that and like work holidays, um, which is great. It's nice to make a little extra money and get the overtime. But it does obviously it takes away time from like content creation and stuff like that. And the other thing that really can kind of I don't want to say like get in the way, but makes it more difficult is anytime like something big happens, like they call a bunch of us in, and of course I'm not going to turn that down. If they call and say they need help, I'm like, yep, I'll be right there. I live 5 minutes from the station, so I know I can get there super quick and get ready. So anytime they call us for help, which is just random. I mean, I've worked one time. I worked day shift 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Went home, went to bed at like 9 p.m. and got woken up at 11 p.m. to come in, and I worked from like 11, just past 11, until 8 a.m. the next day, just because they needed
Wow.
it was just what was happening, and then I was able to go home after that and actually get some sleep. But it's just kind of one of those things where you never really know what's going to happen in terms of the schedule, and it changes so regular. And then they throw training in there too. So like training a lot of times won't be on a regular hour. So if you have to go to like the firearms range or something like that, we'll be on our days off. So trying to schedule all that is it can be a lot. I feel like a lot of the times. And when I'm working like day shift, I will come home after I work my 10-hour shift, and I'll usually do YouTube work for 3 or 4 hours. Um, and then I'll on like usually at least 3 of the days that I work. And then if I work swing shift, I'll try to get up at 8 or 9 a.m. and then I'll do work until 2 p.m. Like do YouTube work until 2 p.m. when I start my shift, and then come home and try to go to sleep. So I just try to squeeze it in wherever I can.
I gotcha. And one of the things, if anybody follows your channel for any period of time, they'll see that you are pretty much all over the place. Both like in the globe, in the world, kind of thing. More recently, I believe you're at Lama, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
You do you enjoy traveling?
Yeah, I love traveling. That's one of the things that I think is a benefit, is like something I didn't know would happen from doing like YouTube stuff, is like getting more opportunities to travel. It really, I've always like enjoyed traveling, and I've been to Europe like before I'd started YouTube. Um, but like going to FarmCon every year, and like going to now we go to Llama every year in the UK, and like traveling as much as we do. And I say we, I normally travel with DJ Goham. We normally meet wherever we're going, or I'll fly to his house and then we'll fly over to Europe together because he's out in North Carolina. Um, but yeah, I never thought I'd get like the opportunities. It's a good excuse to go if you have like an event you're going to, and you can justify like going to it. So we'll tack on like extra vacations. Like the last every time after we go to FarmCon, we usually go on vacation afterwards. So like the last 2 years, we went to Scotland for a week and hung out with the farm sim guy up there for a week after we were done, and just enjoyed ourselves there. So we try to make like not only it be a work trip. I say work trip is a loose term because obviously we're having a lot of fun at the events, but we do work there and we do work hard there while we're there making videos and stuff. But yeah, no, I love to travel. I love to like experience other cultures and stuff like that. Try different foods and drinks and things like that. And yeah, I love it.
I gotcha. And what would you say is your like most favorite place that you've traveled to?
That's a tough one. I think it might be Scotland though. I really enjoy Scotland. I like Scotch quite a bit. So I have a really nice. That's another, I guess, hobby. I have a really nice bourbon and Scotch collection in my house. So every time I go to Scotland, I'll try all sorts of different scotches and things like that, and like going to like distilleries and like learning about the history of it and things like that is really cool. So yeah, I think Scotland's probably one of my favorite places to go.
I gotcha. Awesome. So, if money was no object, where would be like the dream destination to go to?
That's a oof. It'd be tough to choose one. I think I would actually say, even though I really love being in Scotland, I think I would actually say I would spend a lot of time like in Switzerland. I spent a couple days there. I spent a couple days there 2 or 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? Um, and I really enjoyed it. It was beautiful, like going up into the Swiss Alps and seeing like I'm like, this is the Alpine map is right here, and it looks beautiful. Like seeing that area and that region was gorgeous. And I didn't have anywhere near enough time to be there, but I would say that would be what I would choose because it's very expensive to be in Switzerland. Like it was the most expensive food I've ever seen, the most expensive hotel and accommodations. It was just extremely expensive to be there. That's why I was only there for 2 days. But yeah, it was a pricey place to be. So if money was no object, I would take a long time in Switzerland and enjoy myself.
So, I'll be honest with you, that answer rather surprises me because most people it's like, oh yeah, get me to Hawaii or oh, give me some island somewhere in the Caribbean or what wherever, But Switzerland, that's certainly not what I expected. So,
Yeah, my skin's too fair to be in the sun all day, so I can't. I'm not a big beach person, so I don't mind going to like the lake and stuff like that. I don't live right. I don't live on the side of Washington that's next to the ocean. And in addition to that, there's not a lot of good beaches there anyways, because it's always cloudy and rainy. But no, I'm good being away from the beach. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind going to the beach, but it's not my favorite place. So I feel like when I think of like a destination that I want to go, I don't think of tropical places most of the time.
I'm right there with you. I live in Florida and I'm not a beach goer either. So I'm very much in the minority where I'm at.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah.
But what would you say is one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Um, I think it's actually that I I think it's that I'm a police officer. I feel like I don't know, and maybe this people tell me I don't when I'm not in uniform I don't look like or sound like or act like a police officer or what they would think. Because I'm a little goofier and stuff like that. So like anytime I meet just like a stranger or whatever, they're like, "Oh, well, what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I work for the city. I work for the police department." They're like, "Oh, well, what do you do there?" And like that's they don't assume they're like this guy can't be a police officer. There's no way. And I'm like, well, I'm a police officer, and they're like, oh. And then there's like an audible silence, and they're like, okay, cool. Like it takes them a second to process that. And even on my channel, like no one, I've had people like I've had comments where people flat out be like, this guy's definitely not a police officer. There's no way. And I'm like, well, yeah, you don't have to believe it, but it's true. So
You know what? Yeah, I mean, I could understand that coming as a shock. Especially seeing your personality on your channel, not very indicative to law enforcement.
right, yeah.
So, what would you say is one of your biggest fears that keeps you up at night?
My biggest fears.
Yes.
Whew, that's a tough one. I feel like I feel like one of the like my biggest fears is that something will happen to like one of my coworkers. Um, so these are people I've worked with for years, and I'm really close with a lot of them. And like I know there's a lot of like that trauma bonding that's happened between us where we're super close because of everything that we've been through together. And so for me, like sometimes if I'm not working or it's my night off and I know who's working, like I might just hear like a siren outside or something like that. And who knows, it could be a medical call or it could be nothing. But like in my head, like I'm like I start worrying about them, and because I also like I not only do I know them, I know their spouses, I know their kids. Like I met like I've, I'm they're very important to me and they're part of my life. So it's like I think about like I'm like oh my gosh, if something happened to so and so, like I couldn't imagine like their kids going through that or their spouse going through that. And so I feel like that's probably the thing that I probably fear the most that would keep me awake at night.
I understand that. Me personally, I've got several family members who are in the military. I've got several family members who are also in law enforcement, and both the military and law enforcement. There's a very tight knit bond that they develop. You can call it trauma bonding, which I mean that's very prevalent in any high stress situation where people are
Right.
doing the same things with each other. What's really great about the police community, the military community, in particular, is that because they're so close, they can always rely on one another to be able to, come together if something happens. So, I certainly hope that nothing like that ever happens. It's, never a good day for anybody involved, but definitely be keeping in my thoughts, making sure that do whatever I can on my end for you. But do you have any pets?
I do. I do. I have two cats, which I feel like a lot of people don't peg me as someone who would own cats, but unintentionally, I didn't want two cats. I was happy with the one. I really want a dog too. I'm not like one that's like I'm not like sold out on dogs or cats. I like both pretty equally. The only reason I haven't gotten a dog is because I don't think it'd be fair to the poor dog because I feel like I work too much and I travel too much. It just wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to the dog. So I would want to. I'm gonna wait until there's a better season of life, I'd say, where I can get a dog. But yeah, I have two cats. Um, I've had one of them for 9 years. Got him as a kitten. Rescued him in Montana. He was a stray when I was visiting some family there in the wintertime. And then the other one too. My coworker's cat had kittens and asked me if I would adopt one. I was like, sure. So yeah, they're both great. They can be turds sometimes, but they're overall pretty good cats. So
I think that most pet owners would refer to their pets in a very similar manner. They're really good, but sometimes they're turds.
yep, I recognize when they're not perfect.
So, who would you say is your favorite creators outside of Farming Simulator?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, oh man, most of what I watch, I feel like is Farming Simulator. And then when I watch other content, it's usually Farming Simulator creators doing other things. But I think I have to say there's this one I don't even know like a lot of different YouTubers. I haven't really expanded out that far, but there's another creator that he did do Farming Simulator for a little bit, but like his channel is just kind of he plays whatever he wants to play on it. Very large channel. It's T Martin 2 Gaming or T Martin 2. He has 5.4 million subscribers.
Wow.
I only found out about his channel because when Farming Simulator like shortly after Farming Simulator 25 came out, he did a series on it, and I think it was his second episode of that series. He was looking for like help because he realized he needed help figuring out some of the aspects of the game, and he found my channel and showed my channel on that video, and like a bunch of people told me, and so I went and watched it, and I was like, this is amazing, and I really enjoyed I really enjoyed just kind of his style. Um, he's very fun to watch. So I enjoyed watching him. I watch him regularly. But other than that, it's just farm sim creators really. Not a lot of channels that I watch.
And you mentioned a few of your favorites within the community here. You mentioned the Mr. Sealy P. You mentioned DJ Goham, as well as several others. Is there anybody else that you're familiar with inside the community that you say is up there in your rankings?
So I think actually, I mean, I know I mentioned like Rusty Money Gaming. Rusty Money is a great guy. Also retired police officer. So of course he has a special place in my heart always for that. Farm Sim Snowy is another smaller like English creator that I really enjoy his content, and he's a really great guy. I've gotten to meet him at Llama. I got to meet him this year and last year. Another like really there's a few other ones too. Like I think of like Cartech Gaming and some other guys that I've gotten to meet. There's another one that I think is really underrated, and she's not well known for her YouTube videos. She's much more well known for her mods. Is Omatana. So Omatana, as most of us know, makes like she made the open air garden pack, and like she's made all sorts of different building mods and stuff like that. And I've gotten to meet her a lot. She's mostly a German content creator, so she has a German YouTube channel that I think has like somewhere between like 15 and 20,000 subscribers. It might be more than that now. But she has a very small English channel where she that's called Gamer Granny Tana because she's a grandma, so she's an older lady, but she's just the kindest, sweetest lady you'll ever meet. Um, and I've gotten to meet her and get to know her really well at like different like events that we've traveled to because she lives in France, right on the border of Germany, so she lives over in that area or that neck of the woods. But yeah, I really enjoy. I watch almost everything she puts out on her English channel. I really enjoy the content that she puts out.
It's actually funny that you mentioned Omatana because when I first started getting into this space, starting to learn all the names and whatnot, I came across her obviously, like you mentioned, through her mods, and I'm like, oh, Omatana, oh, this is cool. The open air garden, like you said, the farm productions pack and things like that I started interacting with, and then I started finding out more of the kind of behind the scenes, like, oh, okay, well, Omatana, she's a lady. I naturally didn't know that just by working with her mods. Then found out, oh, she's older, she's a grandmother and whatnot. It's like, oh man, that's really amazing. Like, to see the range of not only creators within the space, but just the kind of, just the age ranges in general within the community is a really fantastic thing. It's one of the few gaming communities that I've been involved with where that's a actual thing where there's just so many people from all spectrums of life kind of thing, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does. Like I feel like anytime I get together like with like other YouTubers, like I spend a lot of time, like I said, with like DJ Go Him. He's like 10 years older than me. Completely different background. He used to be a DJ. We make a lot of jokes about like what happens if a DJ and a cop walk into a bar, but and then Mr. Silly P is an older guy as well, who's has a completely different style. And the Farm Sim guy is he's married, he has kids, um, he had his own company for a while up in Scotland doing like advertisement work and stuff like that. Like a brilliant guy, and like all different backgrounds and stuff like that. But anytime we get together, like to hang out, like it's an absolute blast. It just feels like I'm there with like my best friends, which is awesome. They're just a great group of guys.
Well, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I've really have, and I've banged this drum so many times, and I'll continue to do it. This is by far one of the best communities I've ever partaken in, and as you mentioned, you play other games and whatnot, so you've participated in other communities as well. But this is by far the best community that I've ever been a part of. I've done the Call of Duties, I've done NHL series and all that stuff, and there's always that level of toxicity that's within a lot of the communities. There's a small minority within the farm sim community, but that's the vast minority. The vast majority are just people who are just absolutely spectacular, looking to go above and beyond. Has that kind of been your experience as well?
Yeah, so I actually had like I played video games. I mean, since I was young, but I've this is the first community I've really been involved in. Actually, I never got involved in any of the communities. I never played multiplayer for any games that I played. I just did my own thing, played single player on my PC or whatever, and I didn't care about the community at all for any of the games. And then I started doing YouTube, and as my channel started to grow, it might have been somewhere around like 10 or 20,000 subscribers when the channel started to get like a little bit bigger. I uh, I wasn't super involved in the community at that point either. I was kind of still in my own little farm sim community that I built around my channel. But obviously, everyone in that community was part of the community at large and like knew a lot more about it than me. And so it was kind of like a transitioning point where I started being like, oh, I really enjoy this community and started getting more involved in the community aspect. I never thought that that would be something I would enjoy. I just had never been part of a community that's like that, and So I never thought I'd enjoy it as much as I do now, and now the community is like a huge part of it. Um, but with that too, like as I started to get bigger, I was like, great. Like I was scared that I was gonna have to start. Like I was scared it was gonna upset people or cause like I didn't want to have to feel like I was competing with anyone else because it was just like a fun hobby for me. And like I played Farm Sim and like did my YouTube channel as like a stress relief to get away from like my day job to like not have to think about the stresses of that. So like I was like, great, this is just gonna add stress. I'm gonna have to. These other people are not gonna be happy that my channel's doing well. And the more of them that I met, um, and there's actually a really funny story between me and DJ. He before I even knew who he was, he knew who I was, and he did not like me because he thought I had copied a video of his. And you can ask him this; he'll tell you that we. I give him a hard time about it a lot. And we actually met for the first time at a farm con like 3 years ago in Germany. Um, and ever since then, we've been just great friends and traveled. But every time I've met someone that's been bigger than me or another creator that's whether they're smaller, bigger, or indifferent, like all they want to do is help. Like none of them are. I mean, obviously, there's like you said, a little minority of people that like there's something they're trying to get out of it. But most people I've met, like they want to help each other out. When I get together with other creators, small and large, at like these events, creators that are bigger than me and smaller than me, like all we're trying to do is like help each other. Like we talk about like our channel, we talk about analytics, we talk about what's working for us, what's not working. We're like, hey, I did this, it went really bad. Don't do this. Like I don't recommend this. Like we try to help each other avoid our shortfallings. Like we don't want to see anyone fail. Um, we try to help each other out. Or like, I do supercuts on my channel now because DJ was like, "Hey, these do really good. You should try doing supercuts." I was like, "All right," and they do great. So it's we just try to help each other out, which is something that I didn't think that I would get out of that. I thought it would just be a completely different dynamic, and so it was completely different than what I expected in a really good way. But yeah,
Well, and that's fantastic. I mean, like I said, it just goes to show just how much of a great community that we exist in. Yeah, just it seems like everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction, kind of thing, not against each other's, which is just fantastic, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Like I said, I've been a part of several communities, not as a content creator or anything like that, but as a gamer and whatnot, and yeah, it's just, so many people, especially when it comes to like the competition style of games, like the Call of Duties, like the hockey, like I mentioned before, those ones, in particular, like everybody's just looking to be, one step ahead of the next person kind of thing, which
right.
makes sense. It's the style of competition. So, over on your gaming channel, Gamer Cop, I went through there and was taking a look, and a lot of your more recent videos that are on there are very simulator heavy. Is that kind of the style of game that you enjoy playing?
Yes. So most of the I really like I really like and it's less about the simulation aspect of it. I really enjoy like games where there's like finance and business, like a business aspect of it. I enjoy like running a business or doing something where there's profit margins and stuff like that, where you're struggling to make money and build a business or something like that. So most of the games I play are like that. Obviously, there's games like I play like police simulators on my other channel where there's no business aspect to that, and I just enjoy that. Those games I enjoy because it's just funny to see how different the real job is compared to those games, and it just makes me laugh. Um, but yeah, I mean, and I'm planning to play. Europe Truck Simulator 2 on the channel. Start a series on that soon. So like I do simulators, and I enjoy that aspect of it. But the thing I like the most, or I originally liked the most about Farming Simulator, why I started playing it when I first started playing Farming Simulator back in like 2012, was like the business management aspect of it. I enjoyed like building a farm up, building a business from nothing, and kind of working your way up, trying to make good business decisions to build a farm. That was the part I loved, I think, the most. And I also really was fascinated by like agriculture, of course, but yeah, I love business style games. So if there's a business aspect to it, I'm all for it.
I gotcha. Now, let me ask you this: when you're playing on Farming Simulator, and more for like personal or anything like that, I always find that I struggle very much so once I get past what I refer to as the tipping point, where I'm now generating so much money that I'm not struggling anymore, where I'm not having to kind of want for anything beyond a certain point. And oftentimes that's where the kind of gameplay kind of dies for me. Do you kind of have a similar aspect, or do you just keep on trucking through regardless of how big you make your farm?
No, I 100% agree. Like anytime I do a series, like even when I did like my No Man's Land series, and like my first No Man's Land series was like 135 episodes, like ridiculous.
Wow.
And like did it for like years. Like did it was like 2 years to finish the whole series. Like just kept going. Did other series as kind of as along with it, but um, I started with nothing and built like this farm up and everything like that. And like that's the like one of the most fun parts about it is like that struggle to build the farm and make those decisions. And so a lot of times like I'll set different goals. I always like to start like the most I want to start with is like in new farmer mode. Like that's the most usually. Or if like I start it a different way, I do it with a twist. Like I started a Frankenmuth series recently where I started with $2.5 million in the bank, but it was the way I set it up was that was from investors, and I have to pay it all back eventually. So it's basically a loan, and I set it up so I'm paying like dividends to them every year. And I don't know, I try to do different turns like that. But yeah, as soon as I get to the point where I've bought and I purchased all the like I'll do like 1 year maybe two once I get all the nicest equipment because then I'm like all right we made it this farm is it's pretty clear. And I feel like there's a lot of creators like every time I watch Mr. Silly P series, most of his series are kind of that way too. Like he builds up, but you definitely get to a tipping point where you're like, yeah, we can buy whatever we want. We need a brand new case AF11, no big deal. We're just going to buy it. And so for me, it does become less fun at that point. I enjoy the process to get there, but after that, it's like I'll play a little bit. Then I'm like, yeah, no, I'm ready to go back to nothing again and struggle. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it is, but it's what I like about playing the game.
And I'm right there with you. Like I said, it's just that whole, like you said, it's that decision making of what to do next. And, especially being a creator, it's one of those where you get to kind of come up with those scenarios, like you mentioned with the investors. You come up with those scenarios and you kind of work within the confines that you are kind of artificially setting upon yourself. It's personally when I do it, it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of set up those kind of constraints and work within these kind of specific parameters. So no, I completely get what you're saying. So if you could meet any three people, who would they be and why? And they could be, currently, living or throughout history.
Oh man. Oh, that'd be a really tough one.
Now, to buy you some time, the reason I ask this question is it kind of gives people an insight of those people who you find of value and kind of allows us a window to understand who it is that you would deem, important. So that's the reason why I asked that kind of question is just that kind of deeper understanding of who you are.
that makes sense. Yeah, like I feel like I would I would love to have a conversation with Moses from the Bible. I'd have a lot of questions for him. I think that'd be interesting. I'd also love to like meet and just hear what like Martin Luther King had to say. I think that would be he's someone like in history that obviously I look up to. I think I'd be really curious to see what he said. And then I think, oh man, another person I'd love to meet. That's tough. I'm trying to think of someone that I'm trying to choose like a famous person that's man. That's a tough one. I would think I'd probably choose like a musician of some kind. I'd probably really want to meet like I don't know. I'd want to meet some sort of musician. I don't know which one. Some sort of famous musician. I'd have to like sit down and like look through all sorts of different things line by line and try to figure out which one I'd want to meet. But I think it'd definitely be some sort of famous musician.
I gotcha. And you mentioned, that you're a cop, obviously. What was your first paying job?
My first paying job is I worked at a tire shop. Um, I worked at a tire shop called Les Schwab Tires, which is a big chain on like the West Coast. Um, They go over to like I think like Montana, and then they kind of are then west of there. Um, but yeah, so I changed from I got a job at a tire shop at Les Schwab when I was 16, and I worked there until I was 18 through high school, and then I moved uh, for college, and then I worked there for another 3 years while I was in college, and then I became a police officer after that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're at the point where we can go ahead and wrap up our first segment here. So let's go ahead and reach out to the community and see if we can find any questions. So let me start by looking there just real quick.
I did note down two things that they asked. I saw
All
someone
right.
asked my cat's names. My cat's names are Jack and Rooster. They're both guys. And then someone asked what my favorite Scotch was. My favorite Scotch is probably Balvenie. I really like their 15 year, and I also have a port cask finished 21 year on my shelf, which is fantastic.
Okay. Let's see. Just looking here real quick. Oops. Let's see. Kiwi Sim Farmer. Kiwi, thank you so much for your question here. It says, what is your favorite map from any game?
My uh,
Well, actually, here before we answer that question, let's get kind of a full perspective. So you had your channel for going on almost 5 years now. So that puts you what roughly in the FS19 territory.
I started about halfway through the FS19 cycle.
Now, did you play any of the farm sims prior to FS19?
Yes, I played a little bit of FS17. Didn't really like FS17. Played a lot of FS15. Loved FS15. I actually, when FS17 came out, I played it for maybe 40 hours or so. Then I went back to FS15. Um, and then I also played my first farm sim ever. It's either I have a photo of me as a little kid when I got it for Christmas, and I've aged myself a little bit by saying that, but I can't remember. Oh goodness, I was trying to see if I can find it. It's either FS 2011 or 2013. I couldn't remember which one's my first one. I'm sure I could figure out quick here. But yeah, it was one of those. Was my first one that I'd ever played, and I've been sold out to the series obviously since then.
Okay, so you've been around for a long time in the farm sim community. So that's
Yes,
fantastic.
and it
So
is 2011. That was my first one. I just looked it up. I'm holding the disc. I look. I don't want to say how old I was.
well, no, and I started back in FS19 is when I got into the game itself, and it made me wish that I got in as early as you did. It's one of those that's a fantastic game and has only gone up and up, as the years progress. Just out of curiosity, though, what did you not like about 17? That was something that you did enjoy about 15.
Honestly, I don't think it was anything major. I think it just. I think I had so many. I think I had hundreds of hours in 15, and so it just felt so familiar. I think I was just like, no, I'm just gonna go back to what's familiar. So that I think was why. And I didn't use mods at all then at that time. Didn't use them at all. Didn't know what that was, so I didn't use them. Didn't use mods until Farm Sim 19.
Gotcha. So let's stick with the years that. Well, I'll let you answer however you want. But do you want to tell us some of your favorite maps from the games that you have played?
Um, my favorite base game map ever is probably Elm Creek. Um, that may not be a popular opinion. And then my favorite map ever, I think it's really tough. I played on a lot of really good maps. I really enjoyed Griffin, Indiana. That's my favorite
Good
American
map.
map. That's my favorite American map. But I think my overall favorite map has to be No Man's Land. I think because I have more hours in No Man's Land than any other map, and I built just in two different series. I did a series in FS19 and 22 on there. The FS19 series was like 100 and some odd episodes, and the FS22 series was like 80 episodes. And the
Wow.
FS19 series was one of the like series that helped get my channel on the map. So I think I have like a lot of nostalgia for it. And I mean, I would doing my series on there in FS19. Subscribers would like have business ideas they'd give me, and then I would name businesses in the series after them to kind of build the town. So like it was really I really enjoyed the way that I did that and built this town on this map of nothing. And so yeah, I think No Man's Land has to be hands down the one.
Yeah, and No Man's Land by Aliens Gym. That's a fantastic map. As far as I'm aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's coming back to FS25. Is that correct?
That's correct. My understanding is his plan is usually he'll do a map for 2 games and then he'll retire it. That's usually
Okay.
what Alien Jim will do. That's why like Washoe, Nevada, it was in FS17 and 19 didn't come to 22. Um, I mean any of his maps are fantastic, and that's why I'm really hoping he brings back oh my gosh, what is the one that's very similar to No Man's Land that he came out with in
Oh,
FS20?
Western Wilds.
Western Wilds, yes. I'm hoping I'm assuming that one will come to 20 or Farming Simulator 25. If that's the case, I think I'll probably have to do a series on it. Um, but yeah, I know No Man's Land is not coming back, which makes me sad. But I also like it's served me well. It's served me well. It's deserved a retirement.
Which I wasn't aware that's how he kind of progressed his maps, every kind of two iterations of the game and then kind of, sayonara. But no, that makes a lot of sense now that I kind of have that in context because you mentioned Washoe, Nevada. I loved Washoe. A funny and quick story. I remember the first time playing on it. This is back before I actually created the channel, and I'm sitting there, I'm farming into the night, and then all of a sudden my screen on my television just turns bright white, and it's like, what is this? What's going on? And then all of a sudden the alien spacecraft comes into view, and it's like, whoa! Like,
Yep.
was not
Yeah,
expecting that.
he loves to put stuff like that in there. And like in No Man's Land, there's like a werewolf that howls in the middle of the night. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
careful, it like just terrifies you. But yeah, and some people were saying Spectacle Island in the chat. Yeah, Spectacle Island. I did a series on that. That's an amazing map as well.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that
he's
was.
done.
Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, no. Say he's just done so many good maps. I wish he would just keep. It's part of me just wants him to keep bringing new maps in, but it just makes you want to enjoy them more while they're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and Spectacle Island was a fantastic. That was one of my favorite maps from FS19, but like hands down. Let's see. Whiskey Creek Farms, thank you so much for your question. Says, what does it cost to go to the UK?
Um, it depends. If you can, I mean it depends on a lot of factors. I would say the most expensive part is going to be obviously air travel and then um, your hotel. The hotel you're probably looking at for like an okay hotel, you're probably looking at for $100 to $200 a night. Um, and then air travel, you're looking anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 one way. So
Ooh.
air travel usually is what hurts the most. And that's like you could probably get like a round trip ticket from certain major cities that go there a lot for like $1,500 in an economy seat. You could probably get a good deal somewhere there. Um, but yeah, it's definitely expensive. That's why I'd say if you ever go to Europe or ever go to the UK, if you can take more time once you're there, that's better. And a lot of times, actually, in mainland Europe, not just the UK, in mainland Europe, most places, as long as you're not in major cities, it's not that expensive. Like hotels aren't that expensive for decent hotels, and it's not that expensive to be there for most countries in most places. So if you can go over there for 2 or 3 weeks, that's usually makes it a little bit more worthwhile. And once you're over there, if you want to travel between countries, you can get plane tickets for, $50 to go from one country to another one. Like they're super cheap to travel around there, or you can take trains anywhere over there. So once you're over there, it's easy to travel around and be there, but it just costs a lot to get over there first, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Let's see. Ken, thank you so much for your question. Says, has Farmer Cop done role plays for fun?
For like on a series on my channel, I've done a couple. I did one on Silver Run Forest that I sadly didn't finish, and then I did one on Spectacle Island that I did finish. The Spectacle Island one was ridiculous, but a lot of fun. But in general, no, I don't really do a lot of role play. I tried it out. It didn't seem to really work for my channel, and it makes sense. It's just kind of not my thing. So I feel like when I try to do it, like it feels a little disingenuous. Um, I don't mind having like a background or a storyline to kind of work into like why we're on a series or on a map or doing something that we're doing. Like I think that works really well. But in general, like I don't have like characters that I'm not playing characters. I know that works really well for some people like Scroft or like the Farm Sim guy like doing like the Farmhand series, and Mr. Silly P's done some really good role play series as well. So like for them like it works really well and I really enjoy their content. But for me it's just I just think that people aren't expecting that from me. So it just doesn't really fit with my channel.
Let's see. Ken also asks, what does Farmer Cop think of the Nexat pack?
I really like it actually for first DLC.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably the best first DLC we've ever gotten. I could be wrong about that, but that's I mean, it has a lot of advantages to using it. It's a little clunky to drive around and to get things like disconnected is kind of what I noticed. So it's a little clunky there, but I use it more than any other DLC I've used before, I think, already. So um, yeah, other than maybe like the year or like yeah, the year one expansion for Farm Sim 22 with Silver Run and the forestry equipment. Other than that stuff, I think I've used the next set more than any other DLC in just the short time it's been out.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. The Nexat is a brilliant piece of equipment, full set and stop, and now it's in Farm Sim. Whew, good stuff,
Yeah.
good stuff. Let's see. I think that's it from everyone out there. So thank you so much for submitting your questions. Again, if you want to ask Farmer Cop any questions, make sure that you end them with question mark, so it makes it easier to locate. So let's go ahead and head on to our second segment. And actually, this one's going to be a new segment specifically for you. This is called Growing with the Blue. It's just a working title so far, but
I love it.
this is getting to know you for your police work. So I think the first question I have, and I'll be honest with you, I think that's the most important question I think that anybody could ask you ever. So, brace yourself. How many of my tickets can you help me fix?
Zero. But I appreciate you asking. I have very limited control over the tickets that I write. Um, I'm able to void a ticket right after I write it, which I have done. I've written like, for example, I wrote someone an insurance ticket for not having insurance, and then they like called the station like an hour later, like they found their insurance. I was like, well, yeah, come on down and show me. I'll void the ticket, like no big deal. But the moment I send it, which I have to do before the end of my shift, it's out of my hands. I can't. You got to go through the. It goes to the court. Then the chief of police has no authority over. Like a lot of people think, at least where I work, the chief of police has no authority over my ticket. So if I write someone a ticket, he could ask me nicely if I would void it, but I don't think he would do that for one. And two, I think we would all just send our tickets through, and it would be something that would not be an issue. Yep, our tickets are our own. But and also too to clarify, I don't write a lot of tickets. Out of every 20 traffic stops, I maybe write one or two tickets. Most of what I do is warnings.
So one thing that I've kind of experienced from my friends and family is very much the same kind of sentiment, and it's almost as if the tickets that you have to write are almost those ones that are either outside of your control, like you like it's such an egregious violation that you have to write it, or it's one of those that they almost talk themselves into it. Does that seem like a fair characterization?
That is like I always think of it if it's something like pretty egregious, I think of it like I have to justify every action that I do at work. I have to be able to justify everything I do, including be able to justify why I don't take enforcement action. So whether I choose not to arrest someone or not to write a ticket, or not to even pull a car over, like I'm like, all right, I better have a good reason for not doing this if it's something egregious. Because if I stop someone for, let's say they're going 40 in like a 25 or like a 20 mile per hour school zone, and I decide not to write them a ticket, I feel like reasonably so the community would probably be upset that I didn't take any enforcement action, which makes sense. I would probably be upset if I got pulled over doing that for whatever reason. I would never do that, but if I did and I got a warning, I'd be like, no, you better go write me a ticket. I deserve a ticket for that. Um, but yeah, so I think of it that way. You have to, and some people do talk themselves into tickets. And the way I look at that is my main goal with traffic enforcement is to keep people safe and to educate them is usually the easiest way to do that. And most people respond really well to that. But I've had people flat out tell me, "Yeah, I don't care. I'm not going to change the way I drive." And I'm like, "All right, well, I've tried talking with you or tried to educate you about the problem and why it's unsafe. If you're refusing to accept my education, then I'm going to just have to write you a ticket." And that's one that I really can't justify not writing either, because at the end of the day, I want to see there's some behavior change that has to happen, and most of the time that can be accomplished by just talking with people. But sometimes you have to take enforcement action, unfortunately.
One of the largest skills I find that police have to hone, and it's almost immediately they have to have it, is the ability to be able to read people. And if you're lacking in the ability to be able to kind of pick up on those cues that people give, then it's probably going to be pretty safe to say that you're not going to be very good at the job that you do. Would you say that that's kind of a fair assessment?
Yeah, and I think the one that is I think there's kind of two ways to look at that. There's two kind of cues we're looking for. One are like safety things, like safety concerns, and then the other one is like deception or they telling the truth and things like that. Those ones, like deception and they're telling the truth, those ones I think you have a little bit more leeway, and I feel like those get kind of honed in the longer you're a police officer and the more people you talk to. Like you just get really good at like focusing on like you can kind of tell when someone's lying to you or when someone's telling the truth. You can tell pretty easily after you've talked to hundreds of people over the course of a couple years in your career or whatever. But the one that like is really critical that we kind of expect officers and kind of need officers to have that gets a lot of officers that we have that fail field training, um, is because they don't pick up on like body language or concerns like with like people's safety. Like they don't see pre-attack indicators. They're not noticing people looking around, putting things in their or putting their hands in their pockets, stuff like that. Like some of those things are those are the big things for us. Is like officer safety. It's like yeah, it's one thing if some guy lies to you and gets away with it. Like all right, well we all went home at the end of the day. But obviously we want everyone to go home, and so that's the big thing is for us is like safety things that is kind of, and that's like one that's like hard to teach. You can give people help, but if you just don't have any like natural ability to pick up on some of those things, I feel like you really struggle in law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Let me go back just real quick, just to emphasize to people, I don't have any tickets. Calm down. That was not a legitimate question. I was just making fun. Anyways, so when did you start in law enforcement?
I started in 2018, so I've been doing it now for 7 years. Yeah.
And what made you decide to get into law enforcement?
So I've wanted to be a police officer since I was about 7 years old. Back then, I thought it was because you could shoot bad guys and drive fast. I thought that was pretty cool as a 7-year-old boy. But as I got older, I did like the Explorer program. We had an Explorer program in our police department where I went to high school. So I learned more about the job, and kind of the more I learned about it, like for me, I don't have any family that's law enforcement, but I have a lot of family that's like military or done like other service sort of oriented stuff. So like I wanted to serve my community in some way, and I really think law enforcement stood out to me because it was a very unique. It's very unique. To me, I don't know how I would handle it. I've a job that's like I mean I guess I do know because I've worked jobs that are the same day in and day out, and it's hard to get out of that monotony. But like with law enforcement, one of the things I love about it is every day is different. Like you just don't know. You don't know. Like the unknown for me is this really really exciting, really fascinating because I never really know what we're gonna face, and it's also problem solving. Like I like to problem solve, and I mean 95% of my job is solving problems one way or another. And of course I love being able to serve my community in like that very unique capacity. So that's a huge part of it for me as well. But yeah, It's a great job, but also it's the worst job. It's both.
Well, it's definitely one of those jobs where you can have and experience the roller coaster of emotions. You can have some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Can you tell us what was one of your uh, like scariest or hardest moments, on the job?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that really stand out. We had a SWAT standoff a couple years ago. I was working patrol at the time. The SWAT team was there, had the building surrounded. The person was shooting out their window at the SWAT team. Um, and I was doing like perimeter. And so I remember I was watching, we had a sniper post up on a street that was above the building. And so I was up there behind cover near the snipers, and the guy was just randomly shooting. So like bullets were going like directly above us, which for me was like I was like, okay, that's like the closest I've been to like having been shot at. Thankfully, hopefully, knock on wood, that's the closest that it comes to. But yeah, so that was a big one, and I've been to. I mean, I've been to a number of shootings where we show up right after it happens, and I mean, I've been to a shooting where we try to do life saving measures on people, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, unfortunately. So it's like I feel like those are probably the most difficult calls to go to in terms of like stress and just what you have to deal with.
So, one of the most difficult calls that I've been told to go to are those that are potential like domestic violence and stuff like that. It's often a very heated situation and whatnot. Is that kind of the experience that you had?
Yeah, so like other than like there's like the I feel like there's the kind of rare instances where we go to like stabbing, shootings, and like really violent crimes like that. But those like the but we go to domestic violence calls like I at minimum I'll go to one a shift at least. I mean we're going to DV. We call them DV calls. If I say DV, it stands for domestic violence. But we go to. I mean there's some nights where I've been to probably I've had nights where I've been to like 6 to 10 DV calls in one night, and they all just kind of start blending together. But it's really hard for those ones because there's a lot of I think the hard thing is just the amount of emotion that's there. Um, and even like as someone who's not like I don't a lot of times I don't know these people unless I've talked to them before. But going into like that family scenario where there's whether it be abuse or physical violence or even just we go to a lot of them that are just verbal too, where there's just really heated situations where no one's going to jail, but there's still just like a lot of hard things happening in like that family dynamic, and it just complicates things and makes things even more difficult when there's kids involved, and you're trying to manage that and you're trying to investigate and do your job also while shielding the kids as much as you can from what you're there to do. And so it gets really difficult. But yeah, I think those ones, and they're very dangerous. But the good thing with a lot of those calls is like it's very rare you're at one of those by yourself. I've been to
Mhm.
DVs by myself when like we're very busy, and that is a lot scarier because I know it's just me, and it's you're trying to manage a whole house of people by yourself, and that makes it a lot more complicated. But yeah, usually we have enough officers there where it's like, okay, we can get this figured out, and there's a lot of emotion that I think you have to process through. And honestly, I think that's almost worse than like the danger aspect of it, because at a certain point, like the things that we do to keep ourselves safe, like they kind of become routine. We pick up on things, we're in the right positioning, we know what we're doing. We're good at trying to keep ourselves safe, but you can't really get good at dealing with like really hard emotions like that. Like you can get good at processing them after the fact, but there's really nothing you can do in the moment.
Has there ever been a situation where you've almost become like emotionally involved in something that has happened? Like you've maybe gotten too invested into the scenario that is come in front of you.
Yeah, I mean I don't think I've had one where I've gotten too emotionally involved, but I've definitely had. I mean, there's a number of calls like I've been to. I feel like some of the other difficult ones as well are like death investigations when the family's there and everything like that. So I've been to like some really difficult like natural causes and like suicide deaths that I've investigated and been part of, and like a lot of times for those ones, like I'm just you're trying your best to keep your composure. You're around, everything else around you is very emotional, and the family is obviously reasonably upset for what's going on. And so some of those, like you feel it and you feel for the family, and you might pick up on like similarities. Like I have a younger brother, so sometimes when I see like someone like around his age, like it like reminds me of him. So stuff like that, or you meet someone that reminds me of like your mom or your dad or your aunt, your uncle, whatever it may be. And that kind of like triggers something in you because then all of a sudden you're very empathetic and you put yourself kind of part of their situation, even if you can't really be fully part of it. And so a lot of times like those calls, like you just do your best to keep your composure. And then like I've had plenty. I'm not ashamed to admit I've had plenty of calls where I go back in my car and I'm like, all right, I need to take 5 minutes. I might cry for a little bit and just get it all processed out, and then I got to move on to the next call, unfortunately. But yeah, there's definitely it's definitely can be difficult, and emotions can run pretty high, even for like law enforcement that's not maybe directly involved outside of our like official duties. But you really feel for people, and I think that's important too. It's part of your job to um, you're there in everyone's worst days, and so as a human being, like you feel for people. Um, so it's yeah, it can definitely be difficult.
Oh, for sure, and having a sense of empathy, makes it to where you, at least I would imagine, are more approachable, and that you're able to kind of understand where people may be coming from in certain situations, which could potentially be a double edged sword. Is it? How do I ask this question? Um, is it one of those where do you feel like having too much empathy or too much like emotion in the game could be detrimental, or do you think there should be like some level of like understanding to where you're able to kind of show that you are human and it's not just a job?
I think that there's I think both. I've seen officers go to the extreme end where they're way too emotionally involved. Um, the problem with that side of it is you now it makes it very hard for you to do your job because you're way too emotionally invested in what's going on. Um, and so it just yeah, I think that you can't be at that extreme, and I also don't think it's healthy to be at the other extreme where you just have no emotion and you're going to these calls like it's everything is just business. I think it's important to be kind of in the middle. Most cops tend to go towards the side where it's just business, and I think that's a really common like coping mechanism. They just kind of take all that and throw it in the back of their minds and just block it out, and that's just how they cope with it. And so the easiest way to prevent more stuff from having to go back there and limiting what has to go back to the back of your head and you have to deal with later is just to not have any skin in the game at all and just like not care and teach yourself not to care and not to feel anything on calls. Um, I've definitely swung that way before as well, where you start to get kind of burnt out. And when that happens, like I try to remind myself, like I'll try to hang out with like friends of mine that aren't police officers. Um, because when you're around other cops, even though if these are my best friends, like cops like to talk about cop stuff and they remind you of work. So like I'll try to be around like I want to say like normal people for a bit because it kind of recenters you to realize that like okay, yep, this is why I do it is because um, there's people out there to protect and like there's normal people out there. Not everyone's evil or against me or excuse me or whatever the case may be. So I try to stay in the middle where I want to go to these calls and I want to be a human being, but I also want to maintain professionalism and be able to do the job appropriately and effectively and not be too emotionally involved where I can't do the job appropriately. So a lot of times that just comes down to being a human being as much as you're allowed to be on a call because you can only be so much of a human on a call because obviously we have a job to do. And then a lot of times that stuff that you can't necessarily be human about on the call, like I usually end up talking to someone or processing that later, is usually what I find is kind of helpful. But yeah, I think kind of being in the middle is the best because it kind of keeps you grounded and reminds you why you're there, but allows you still to do the job effectively.
No, absolutely, that makes tons of sense. Like I mentioned before, being a police officer, you're experiencing some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. But with that comes, a huge swing, like I said earlier, of emotions, and you go through your day to day seeing things that many of us, have never seen before. Things along those lines. How do you deal with the with some of the things that you may or may have not seen, how do you kind of compartmentalize and keep it to where it's all kind of not going to boil over, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was really bad at dealing with like trauma and hard things early on in my career. Um, and it kind of got to a point where it did boil over, and like I was like, it was just way too much for me. Um, and kind of after that, like the kind of the process I go through now is like, if I've been on a hard call or something like that, we also have a peer support team, which is great. So I'll either talk to someone on the peer support team, or I have like friends of mine that aren't police officers that I trust and are really close with me. And like I think the most important thing is to find someone you trust and talk about it, because I think not talking about it is like the worst thing you can do. Because if you talk about it even once or twice and just if you put it all out there, it allows you to it allows your mind to process the emotions. Because in especially in like very high stress, traumatic sort of situations, your brain kind of locks up everything that's going on, and then it buries it because it doesn't know how to handle that or process that, because it's not normal, and nor is the brain really designed to be able to like regularly experience that. So I think then dragging it back out from the back of your brain and then talking through everything that happened. And every time I've done that, like it's brought out emotions that I didn't even realize were there. It allows you to process them by just acknowledging that they're there and then move on. And usually I think that's the healthiest thing. And obviously there's stuff that like still sticks with you. It's not that I'm forgetting about like the hard things or anything like that, but it gets it so they no longer have like a hold or a weight to them, if that makes sense, or at least a lot less of a weight. And I honestly think, like, I know there's cops that go through this career and don't talk about a darn thing, and I couldn't imagine doing that. I don't think it's healthy for sure. But yeah, I think having a good balance where you talk about it keeps you healthy to be able to make it to the end of your career, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That makes tons of sense. I mean, it sounds like that's just good general advice. Not just in the high stress situation of your kind of job, but just in general. Hey, if it's something that you know that's stressful or something that's heavy for you, just talk it out with somebody that you trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, anytime I go to a call where like been a victim of like a really hard crime or like something really difficult's happened, or there's like a bad family situation, it's like I always tell them you got to go talk to someone.
Absolutely. What kind of education did you have to go through in order to become an officer?
So there's no college requirement for my agency. Some agencies require college, some don't. Some require 2 year, 4 year. I have a 4 year degree. I actually finished it online after I started as a cop. I did the first 3 years of college, then did two more online to finish it after I started. The way it works in Washington, which I know is different from other states, every state's a little different. But in Washington, you have to get hired by a police agency first before they'll send you to the academy. So once you're hired, they start paying your salary, um, and you get benefits and things like that, and then they send you to the academy themselves as that agency. And then the academy in Washington is 4.5 months long. It's mostly classroom based. It's mostly about the laws and criminal procedure and case law and a lot of things like that. But they also do like 40 hours of firearms training, 40 hours of driving training in there, 80 hours of like fighting and defensive tactics. And so they work all that stuff into the day as well. Um, and then after that, most agencies will have like a post academy where they teach you specific procedures and policies to their agency. Some agencies would do that for like 2 months. Like I know Tacoma Police Department has a 2 month post academy. Our agency does 2 weeks. So after that, then you go on to regular field training where you now have to do police work, while another officer sits in the car with you and basically grades you on everything you do, which is far more stressful than the academy is. And yeah, and if you that happens in four phases technically speaking. The first phase, you're with an officer for a month, then you switch officers to a new officer for another month to learn different things and get different feedback. And then you do a third phase of 1 month. And then the fourth phase is 2 weeks, which is called shadow phase, where the first officer you're with shadows you and doesn't interfere, and just make sure you're safe to be out on your own officially. And then after that, they send you out on your own. So that's kind of like the schooling and the training for it. Most people pass the academy. It's very rare for someone to fail the academy. We fail about 50 to 60% of officers on field training. So we get
Oh
a high
wow.
fail rate in that because that's where it's one thing to procedurally understand how to do the job and know the laws and know all that, and even be able to do scenarios really well. Because obviously the academy has a lot of scenario training, but none of it really compares to real life and actually doing it. So that's where we see that's kind of where the stress of FTO and the stress of actually doing the job in real life. That's where we kind of see, if people are going to make it or not, and that's why it's a very high fail rate. I mean, some agencies I know of have like a 75 to 80% fail rate. Some are a little less. It kind of depends on the area you work. In areas where there's less violent crime or it's kind of a slower agency, you might have 80 to 90% of people might pass. So it kind of depends. But yeah.
So, with your shoulder being messed up here over the past little while, have
Oh,
you
I lost
been?
you there.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are. You're back. Sorry, you were muted for me for a second for some reason.
Oh, so with your shoulder being messed up here for the past little while, have you been just completely outside of the force up until this point, or are you doing something else in the meantime?
So in the meantime, I've been doing a mix of like desk work, which is the worst, but it's better than nothing. Up until I got my surgery scheduled, or I got to go get my surgery. I helped out records with some stuff. I would take phone reports, so if people had to report something over the phone, or if people came into the police department lobby to report things, I would talk to them and do that. I actually made some arrests while on light duty, which was kind of funny. Um, through my investigations. And then after I got the surgery, since I got the surgery, I've just been, while I have the brace, I'm just sitting at home, um, because my expectation at work, even in a light duty assignment, is that I'm able to drive a car and I'm able to carry a gun. Because even in light duty, I still carry a gun. So once the brace comes back or comes off, I'm going to go back to work. I'll go back to work April 2nd. And while I'm doing my physical therapy and things like that to get back to 100%, I'll do various tasks around the department and stuff like that. And I've been doing I've been teaching I'm a field training officer at my department, so I've been doing the phase zero stuff where it's mostly office and procedure stuff and just kind of teaching that sort of stuff. I've been doing that with trainees, and then I also am able to instruct and do other things, but I just can't. The only thing I'm not allowed to do is work patrol.
Well, no, and again, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kind of want you to be out there to be able to handle what's thrown at you. So, do you have any inspirations to be in a certain position within your agency?
Um. Honestly, I'm a newer I'm a brand new field training officer in my department. I really want to dive into that. I wouldn't mind being like the training coordinator for our department someday. Usually that's a sergeant's position, so I'd probably have to promote if I wanted to do that. My current rank is I'm a senior police officer at my department, which is the highest rank before like promoting to sergeant. So there is times when I'm in charge of like the shift that's working if I'm the most senior person working, which doesn't happen too often because there's people that have been there a lot longer than me, but it does happen every so often if I'm got a bunch of new people that are working. Usually it happens on graveyard because there's more new people that happen to be on graveyard a lot more times. So, um, but yeah, so I would like to get kind of more involved in that. We have detective positions and stuff like that in our department. I would love to be on like our SWAT team that we have. Um, I think that the only reason like I'm kind of hesitant is it's a big time commitment, and with traveling and stuff like that, it would be hard to justify me being on there because I'm not as available as some other people would be. So usually when there's SWAT calls and stuff like that, I am able to help out kind of in a peripheral kind of role and do like perimeter and stuff like that, even if I'm not directly involved in the mission. So I try to help out as much as possible, stuff like that. But yeah, I also am in terms of like my specialty positions that I currently hold. I mentioned field training officer. I'm a nationally certified radar and lidar instructor, so I can teach other officers how to use radar and lidar in accordance with federal law and stuff like that. So I teach. I'm the only instructor in our county, so I teach everyone in our county radar and lidar, and I do the refreshers for that. And I'm in charge of our agency's like radar and lidar program, so I make sure that we get radars installed in our new cars and lidars and stuff like that are available and things like that. Which radar and lidar are just kind of speed measuring devices. Most people know what radar is, but lidar is something you can do stationary with a gun that shoots a laser pulse to measure speed. Um, it's actually a lot more accurate than radar. Um, And then I'm also a collision investigator, so I've been through a lot of training to do that. I'm an advanced collision investigator for the state of Washington. That's like my state qualification for that. So I help out a lot with like collision investigations. If there's serious collision investigations like bad DUI crashes or fatality wrecks or serious injuries, they'll call me into work to investigate those. So I enjoy doing that. I said in school that I would never use math in a career in law enforcement, even though I was good at math, and now I use math in law enforcement, which is stupid but also cool. And then I also teach. We have a university nearby that has like a police cadet program. So I'll drive to go teach there at that, and I teach the police cadets like patrol tactics and scenario based training and stuff like that, which I really enjoy doing that. But I really enjoy like the education aspect of it. I like to teach people. I mean, that's why I'm just sitting here babbling on about law enforcement stuff. Like I love to talk about it, and I love to teach other people. So I usually enjoy roles where I can teach or like like field training or being instructors of various sorts. Cause I like to pass on what I know because I'm passionate about it. If that makes sense, but.
No, absolutely. And, just listening to you talk about it, it's very obvious that this is something that you are passionate about. So, it was kind of the reason why I created this whole segment around this specific topic is because, just in our initial kind of talks, I could pick up on it pretty quickly. So definitely comes out that this is something that you're passionate about. On top of that, it sounds like you're definitely a man of many hats when it comes to the responsibilities and duties within your agency. So, and you'd mentioned earlier as well how you make yourself available for those kind of long shifts for like the holidays and stuff like that, because you mentioned how you were single without children. So you try to make it to where other officers have the ability to be able to take their vacations and stuff with their families. So it definitely sounds like you're not only an officer with many hats, does a lot of the trainings and stuff, but you also sound like somebody that is dependable and somebody that the entire agency can rely on, which is very admirable. Let's see. What's one of the things that you like least about law enforcement?
Um, I think one of the things I like the least about it is death investigations. They're always very emotional, even if it's like from natural causes. They're always very hard scenes to do. No one likes to think about death and face it. Even people that like aren't scared of death still don't want to deal with it most of the time. So like I have the utmost respect for like coroners and the people that do autopsies and things like that. I could never do that. But yeah, so I think they're just some of the most difficult investigations and very emotionally charged. And they take a long time to do them. So you feel like when you're in them, you're there for a while, um, handling that situation. So I think that's probably my least favorite part of being a police officer is death investigations.
And what would you say is the most the thing you like the most about being a police officer?
I th- this one's a little bit more like I really enjoy like I enjoy patrol work a lot. Like I could probably go be a detective or do something else like that, but I love patrol work. I love how different every day is. I love the challenges that we face and things like that, and how it just calls come in and we just deal with what we're given as we handle it. So that I think that's probably my favorite part about it is just handling calls. I just love handling calls. And part of that too, what's another like fun aspect of it too is anytime you have like an emergency call, it's always fun to drive with your lights and siren on. It's always fun. I enjoy it. It always brings a smile to my face. It's probably the thing we do that has one of the highest liabilities regularly. So you have to be. I'm a very good driver. So you have to be very cautious about it. Obviously, you can't just drive as fast as you want, doing whatever you want. You have to follow rules and policy and stuff like that to make sure you're safe because you don't do anyone any good if you can't make it to the call. Um, but yeah, but I really enjoy it. It's just a lot of fun.
No, I could certainly see how doing something like that is going to be a load of fun. So, like I mentioned before, I've got friends and family who are in law enforcement, and that leads me to being kind of the outsider looking in, I tend to watch a lot of content out there that is very much derived from law enforcement. So like body cams and things like that. And I'll go out and I'll watch a Donut Operator, Code Blue Cam, a lot of the big ones. But one thing that I've noticed from watching body cams, and I don't know if this is like an actual thing or not, and maybe you can explain it to me if it is. One thing that I've noticed is, when officers are doing traffic stops, I'll observe them walking up from behind the car and they'll touch the car, like on the backside. Is that a thing for some reason? Or is it
Uh,
just something I noticed and it's just an enigma?
nope, that's definitely a thing. Some places are very. I should start this by saying I don't do that, and I don't know of any. I know of very few people in my agency that do it. Um, and I don't think anyone really knows why we do it. There's two reasons I've heard. And what's funny about the two reasons is people are either sold out with one or the other. No one thinks that they're both helpful. Some people think that one is helpful, some people think the other is the reason they do it. And I don't think either are super helpful, and I can justify why I don't do it anymore. I see someone in the chat said fingerprint. Yes, one of the justifications, like back in the day, there used to not be like body cameras and everything wasn't documented super thoroughly. So, um, and radio transmissions may not be that great, so you may not know. It's a really easy way to physically tie you to that car, as if your fingerprints are on it. That's one school of thought that I've heard. That I think is a very like old school of thought, because there's no, like, if I'm on a traffic stop, I have a body cam and I have two car cameras running. Like there's no doubt like that's the vehicle. Like there's no way they're not gonna be able to tie it back to me. And everyone knows where I'm at and what car I'm out with. I've ran the car. Like all that's already happened before I made that stop. So like there's like for me like that doesn't seem like a reason to do it. So the other reason that people do it is they think it's a safety thing where they're checking the trunk to make sure it's closed, so no one's going to pop out of the trunk. Um, because there's been plenty of police officers who've been ambushed by someone doing that. You can tell if the trunk is latched or not. And modern cars, anyways, in any trunk, there's a lever inside to pull it. So they're not going to pre-set this up like they used to do. It's going to be, they can just pop it open. It can be closed 1 minute and then open the next. Like it doesn't matter. You just have to pay attention. And usually you can tell if it's not closed. Like you can see that the seams are not lined up. So I pay attention to the trunk, but I don't touch it. I just focus on everything else going on.
So,
But yes, it is a very common thing that they train cops in a lot of areas to do.
okay, so it's not that I'm crazy, it's that
Nope.
there was a reason.
Yep.
Okay, okay. Well, good. At least I'm not completely unobservant. So, you'd mentioned earlier that the stresses of the job kind of play very well into the channel that you created there and Farming Simulator itself. What would you say specifically about Farming Simulator kind of ties into a good relief from the stresses of the job?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things with it. I mean, one, it's a non-competitive game. I don't I can play it and it doesn't create any stress for me. So I can get on, I can hang out on a map, do my thing. It doesn't create any stress. It's just relaxing. And I think also too, like there's a sense of like you've accomplished something after you've harvested a field or you've done, sold your crops. Like there's a satisfaction that we all as farm sim players recognize and realize when you build up your farm and you buy a new tractor or do this or do that. So I think it's just a calm game. I don't play a lot of like I don't play a lot of like shooting games. I've never really been into them, and I think it's and like I wasn't even into them like before I got into law enforcement, but like now like I just don't want to play those games. It just feels, and it's not that it feels like I'm doing police work per se, um, but like it just feels too similar. I like playing police sims though because to me they seem so far off of what actual police work is that it's comical to me. So those ones usually are fine, and most police sims don't have like a lot of violence. But I also don't play like I know like for GTA you can do like there's a lot of mods to do like police role play and stuff like that. I don't play any of those, and I don't really want to because they've made it very realistic, and those are a lot more realistic than other games have in some ways. And there's also more violence, like in GTA. So I usually just try to avoid. I try to avoid violence if I'm not at work, if that makes sense. And so Farm Sim, there's no violence. It's very calm, and I enjoy just playing it.
Absolutely. And one thing that I've observed with your gamer cop channel there, and specifically the police simulator, number one, I thought it was absolutely hilarious because I'm sitting there listening to you and watching the episodes that you're putting out there, and you're just sitting there and almost critiquing just how outlandish some of the situations are. Yeah, I found it's absolutely hysterical
Yeah,
at
the
certain
amount
points
of
there.
people's rights that I violated in those games, it just is comical to me. I'm just like, well, this would get me fired. Like like I'd be sued for this. This is bad. Like you can't do this. It just blows my mind. And I think that's why I enjoy playing those is because it's so far out there that I'm like, this is it just is comical to me.
Do you think that it's the whole like the game creators like almost tacitly didn't have anybody within law enforcement to kind of bump these games up against, and they're just kind of winging it? Do you think it's something like that, or do you think it's just a kind of misunderstanding, and or even a third option? Sorry, is kind of a twisty turny kind of question, but do you think that it's a the whole simulator aspect? Do you feel that it's possible that they're trying to balance that not education but entertainment and simulator kind of vibes?
I think I think it depends on the game. I've only played two on my channel to be fair. Um, so there's probably better ones out there. I think at least for the two that I've played, um, I believe both of the companies that made those games, two different companies, are both German based, and they're trying to make a police simulator that revolves around American police. So they're drawing what they know about American police not from personal experience or from like growing up or being in the US. They're drawing it mostly from what they've seen in like body cam videos or on the news or in TV shows and movies, and I think that's where they're getting it. And their concept, like obviously the laws are very different in Germany, um, and like a lot of people don't think about it like when they travel, like the rights that we have don't like in the United States, like our constitutional rights, like that's not necessarily a thing everywhere you go, and so they don't have that same like perspective of like, and so I think of like it just I think that perfect storm of their misunderstanding and like a little bit of lack of research and just conceptualization and them trying to draw from what they know about police in their country. I think it just makes it so different. And like what the first game I did on my channel that was a police simulator is uh, Patrol Officers Police Simulator is the name of it.
Hmm.
Um, and they like they it was hard to be safe in the game. Obviously, the game didn't let me like get hurt because it wasn't designed to like set you up for that failure. But like the amount of things I did in that game that would have been so unsafe for me to do as a real life police officer were ridiculous. Like so many things, and so it just kind of cracked me up how they kind of set it up. So if you're playing a simulator game out there about police work, please don't think that that is a good habit if you're going to go be a police officer.
Well, and just like any simulator game out there, there's only so much that they can capture and make it
Right.
entertaining as well. So, yeah, don't think that, hey, we're playing Farming Simulator, therefore everything that's in the game is going to happen in real life. I'm sure you ask a real life farmer and they're going to be like, no, there's nothing about this game that even comes close to representing what it is I do in real life kind of thing. I'm sure the same thing can be said about, Police Simulator.
Yeah, and I think like with a job like law enforcement, like there's so many aspects to it. There's so many like it's probably one of the jobs where like they expect you to wear so many different hats. Like you have to do like every single type of call has a different way to handle it. And each one of those types of calls there's 30 or 40 different ways to handle each subtype of that type of call. Like there's just like I mean, even I've been doing this for 7 years, which isn't like a long time, but like pretty much every shift there's still like something is different. Like there's some calls are very similar to other ones, but like there's still new stuff that like I've never seen before happening. Um, it so trying to capture that in a game, I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even try to imagine trying to do that as a police officer. But yeah, it's just too complicated, I think.
Would you say that that's maybe one of the more thrilling things about your line of work is that you can go in every day for the next 20, 30, 40 years and not a single day is going to be like the day it was before?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's like a very attractive thing to me, and like that's also one of the reasons like I like doing content creation is like because I kind of dictate. Content creation is different in the sense that I dictate how it goes, but every video is different. Um, it's not like I wake up and I make the same video every day. Um, like that just doesn't work. So like I from working a job like when I worked at the tire shop where there was some variation, but after you've handled every tire situation, like you've handled them all. So like they're just kind of the same after that. You know how to deal with them. So it gets really like monotonous and boring. And like for me, like that, I really struggle like in that scenario. And it's probably like some ADD of some kind as well, where like I like things to be moving or doing things and things to be different. Um, so like yeah, I think for me that's like one of the biggest draws to like a career in law enforcement is every day is so much different than the last. Even the days that are similar, they're still different. So you just you never really get into like just a rhythm of we're doing the same thing every day.
Well, and like you mentioned before, there was those days where you said you went to several DV calls, and I mean, you were saying how they all kind of run in together, but every single one of them is going to be, different. Even though you're going there for very similar reasons, people are arguing with each other. Might even have gotten physical to some point. But each instance is going to have its own unique flair to it, as the kind of outsider looking in. So it's definitely one of those kind of appealing aspects. If you're looking for something that's going to keep your brain kind of active and not get into that monotony, that's definitely going to be one of those kind of careers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that some agencies out there they have varying degrees of rules regarding social media. Some prefer that you don't do it at all, as to avoid any kind of conflicts within the community that you exist in, and others are more lax. Does your agency tell you what it is that you can or cannot do in regards to your online presence?
Very vaguely. They say we can't do anything that would negatively reflect on the agency. Is kind of their line there. Um, yeah, that's kind of the line that they put in like in the sand. And so like and we also have to have. It was kind of funny when my channel hit 1,000 subscribers and I became monetized. I actually had to go to my chief and officially request it to be okay for me to have an outside job. We're not allowed to have an outside source of income unless it's approved by the police chief. The reason for that is they don't want us to like be like, oh, well, I work my 40 hours here and then I also work, you know, part time at this other job where they expect me to be here on these two other days. They don't want anything like that to affect how they're, because they call us in for stuff. We have to do trainings on our days off. They don't want anything to affect the operations of the department, which makes sense. So I had to, which they were totally fine because I was like, obviously it doesn't. If I was sitting here right now and I was full bodied and someone they called me on my cell and were like, "Hey, we need you to come to work. We got this big thing going on." I'd be like, "Okay, I'm on my way." You know, I actually had a live stream one time interrupted by something like that. I was like, "Sorry guys, I got to go to work." So it happens sometimes. But yeah, so like this never. They're like, "Yeah, we're not worried about it." They're like, "What do you do on YouTube?" I was like, "I play a farming game." They're like, "Yeah, that's all right." They could be if like I was doing like a political channel or like a police specific channel, they could have an issue with it if it was negatively affecting the department. I think that would be. I think they could tell me I couldn't do it if they wanted to. I think it'd be hard for them to say no to this. And they have now it's like I mean everyone at my work knows I do this, and they of course give me a hard time about it. But yeah, they don't. That's not an issue at all. But I did have to go and be like, "Hey, is this okay?" They're like, "Yeah, that's fine."
So, your fellow officers there were they kind of surprised when they realized that hey, you're a farmer cop and you've got a pretty substantial following online? Are they kind of surprised when they find this out, or?
The new officers that get hired that find out are I have like the group of officers that were around that like like everyone that was there when I started my channel. Like I was asking them to subscribe. I was like, "Hey guys, subscribe to support me," and they're like, "Oh, whatever." And so they did. And they were making fun of me. They're like, "You make farming like they were." It was really funny. Like they gave me such a hard time about it. Not like in like a mean way. Like, I mean, we give each other crap about everything at work constantly. We're just brutal to each other. But yeah, they gave me such a hard time about it. And then when the channel started to grow, there it went from like they're like instead of like laughing at me, they were like, "Oh, ha 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 ha!" Like it became less funny the bigger the channel got. And when it kind of was like really successful, they're like they can't. It makes it hard. They still give me a hard time, but they don't laugh at me about it anymore, which is kind of funny because they just like me, they never expected it to take off into what it is now. But yeah, no, they've it's been interesting watching their reaction, and they're all super supportive of me. But yeah, and I have a couple coworkers that play Farming Simulator and occasionally watch my videos for help or something. But yeah,
So, has anybody, like any of the new hires that have come on after you, have they kind of recognized you? Not for your law enforcement job, but have they like recognized you as like, holy, you're farmer cop kind of thing, and like just kind of came out of the blue?
thankfully, no. I have had one of my coworkers I can't remember who, like I think it was his brother-in-law or something, but he saw like his brother-in-law playing Farming Simulator. He's like, "Hey, yeah, my coworker makes videos on YouTube that does that." And obviously, he, as his brother-in-law, he knew that my coworker was a cop, and so he immediately like looks at him and goes, "Is it Farmer Cop?" And then he was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He's like, "I watch his stuff all the time." So like that's the only like one that I've heard of that's like recognized me, but only through like a tertiary means. And one of my coworkers' kids actually found out about my channel and was watching it, and he was like, I think he was like 8 or 9 at the time. So he actually brought him to the station one day to meet me, and he was super excited about that. So I thought that was awesome. But other than that, no, no one's really known who I am, which I'm okay with.
So nobody in like you pull somebody over and they're looking at you kind of strange and like, why do I know you? Like no, nothing like that.
Haven't had that yet. I did have someone. There was a community event that we did, and this lady, like an older lady, actually. My coworkers were telling me about this, so hopefully they weren't just making it up. But I don't think they would have made this up. But they said this lady came up to them and was like, "So is Farmer Cop working today?" And then they were like, "Oh no, he's actually on vacation." And I knew she didn't follow the channel that well. I'm assuming like her grandson or something did, because I was actually in Europe for FarmCon at the time that she had asked that. But my coworkers like texted me. They're like, "Hey, this lady came asking for you," which is kind of funny to me. But yeah, most of the time people don't recognize me on duty, and I think that's because I just look completely differently, like putting a full uniform on. So I think that people just they might like recognize some similarity, and I also like I even sound different. Like I have my police voice that I like my work voice. It's like I even I don't know because like here I'm just totally relaxed, chilling, but at work it's like everything's a little bit more serious. So I don't know. My voice is probably just a little bit more serious, so I don't think they always make the connection, which is totally good with me. And no one on my channel. Well, a few people have figured out where I worked, and I'm sure there's a few people out there that know where I work. And like my main moderators and stuff for my channel, they know where I work. And like some of like the close friends that I have through the community know where I work and know where I am. But for the most part, people don't know where I work. I just tell them I work in Washington somewhere.
Makes sense. Makes sense. There's always that realm of anonymity that we as content creators certainly want. I'm sure that the line that you're towing is certainly more precious because of the kind of work that you do. If somebody found out where I was, it's like okay, but somebody finds out where you're at, it can open the door to a lot of different things. So earlier I asked you what was one of the scariest and hardest moments in your career so far. Let's kind of flip that coin. What's one of the proudest moments of your career so far?
Oh man, um, that's a tough one. Like I feel like in general, like you think more about the things that like happened that you didn't like, or that like the negatives like always stand out more than the positives. But I mean, I've I've set our department like record in like most felony arrests and stuff like that. I've arrested people for like some really awful things. Like I've arrested like people for serious assaults, for rapes out of like my investigations, and like I'm super like proud of that work because it like really makes a difference in our community, and it's like those cases like you don't always get a good result out of. So like I'm really happy with that. I've been on calls where like I've been able to provide people with life-saving measures, and that's saved their life. And so like I got a life-saving award for one of those. So like I was pretty excited about that because it you know you made a very obviously made a very big difference in someone's life. Um, so I think stuff like that where the community's really benefited from what I do. It's like that's the stuff that stands out the most. Like where um, there's like a big consequence to the community in like a positive way.
I gotcha. And what would need to happen for you to consider your day in law enforcement a success?
Everyone goes home. That's it's a very low standard. Like obviously there's a range of days, but I think that for everyone that I work with, like if at the end of the day we're like, all right, we're we're all at the briefing room at the end of the day, and we all made it through the shift alive, and it's like okay, that's a like for us that's a successful day. It may have not been a good day, but that's a successful day for us. And even I say that like that's still even if it's not the best of days, even on the worst of days of everything going wrong and everything bad happening, if we all go home at the end of the day, that's still a pretty darn good day.
No, absolutely, and that's be honest with you, that's quite into what I figured you were going to respond. Um, it just it seems like the kind of obvious answer. So, do you have are you wanting law enforcement to be like your career for your life, something you retire at, or are you kind of looking more in the short term?
Uh, so the like I get a lot of people ask me on my channel like when are you going to go full time YouTube? Like people ask me that question, and the answer is like it's difficult. Like if I because I'm really passionate about both things. And so if I wasn't as passionate about one of them, it'd be easier to give one of them up. So like if I was like, yeah, law enforcement was like a good job, right? And I wasn't passionate about it, didn't care that much about it. I would say it would be as soon as I can, make enough to survive and support myself reasonably on my YouTube. Um, but for me, like I don't know if that'll like I think I'm gonna retire after I've done a career in law enforcement because I am so passionate about it. And it's difficult because it's like working a full time job, and then YouTube's another close to full time job. I feel like with putting in the work for two channels. Um, yeah, my only thing that I've adjusted in my plan with YouTube is my our retirement age in Washington is 53. I started as a cop when I was 21, as young as you could be. So I would retire at 53 after 32 years on, and then start drawing my retirement payments right away for that. The only adjustment I've made with like YouTube is I'm gonna see if I want to retire at 46 years old after I have 25 years on. Um, because I feel like for me, like that feels like okay. I feel like if I've done 25 years in law enforcement, I can say I've done a career in law enforcement. Like that's a career, and then I'm still young enough at that point where then, until I start drawing my pension at 53, I can just do YouTube full time or do something else. But yeah, I think as of right now, my plan is to retire from law enforcement. Even if YouTube, I could have 10 million subscribers and I'd still want to go to work as a cop. Like I love the job.
Well, everyone, you heard it right here. Farmer Cop plans on being around for the next 20 years, so buckle up. So, kind of given your previous answer to what you consider a successful day as a given, what would you consider to be a successful career?
A successful career, is I feel like being able to. I want to be able to say at the end of my career that I'm proud of the work that I did for my community. I want to be able to look back and not be like, oh, I wasted my time. I don't want to look back and be like I was a lazy cop. I want to look back and be able to look myself in the mirror and say, every day I went to work, or by and large, every day I went to work, I worked hard. I was always, in the top of my department or one of the top people in my department for arrests and stuff like that. Because, and stuff like that. Like I want to be able to look back, and also with that too. Like I think for me, like one of the reasons I want to do like field training is it's a very unique way. I'm training like the next generation of officers for my department. And for me, like that is it's such a privilege, and it's such a heavy but good weight to carry. So being able to like get to a point where I retire and look back and see, a dozen or more officers, hopefully dozens more in my department, however many that I've trained over the years that have made it and are now like really good, successful cops. Like being able to look back, like, because they're kind of like, I feel like they're more of my legacy than anything else. Um, because then they'll go forward. Some of them will become field training officers and train more people, and like the legacy continues. Um, so yeah, I think getting to the end of my career alive, I think that's one. And then being able to look back and be proud of the work that I've done. I think it's a big thing for me. And I always like, even on days when we're slow, I'll just go out and make a bunch of traffic stops. My opinion of it is, if I'm at work, they pay us fairly well where I work as well. I know that's not the case everywhere, but if they are paying me to work, they're paying, my perspective on it is they are expecting me to go out to be doing work, and to do good work. And so I try to, every time I go to work, I try to do as much work as I can, to the point that I'm still doing really high quality work. I always try to be an example to the other officers around me, because I've noticed that like even some of the older officers that kind of had started to check out, like when they get on a shift with me, like they feel like they go out and they actually do more proactive police work and stuff like that, is what I've noticed, because they see that like as an example in me. And I try to make it fun. Like I'm like, all right guys, let's go out and let's go do something, make it kind of a team thing versus everyone just kind of doing their own thing. So um, yeah, I try to stay very busy. My first year as a police officer, I was very I was very motivated, and I worked a lot of overtime, and I led my department in almost every stat. And I had made, in that, for my first year as a cop, I made over 330 arrests
Wow.
in the 1 year, and in addition to that, I also made over 1,000 traffic stops. And the next closest person to me in my department was around 100 arrests and around 300 traffic stops, and those were two different people. And so like I at the end of that, and I wasn't trying to like just get like really high stats, because I don't think the stat matters as much as the quality does. I just my When I came to work, I went to work and I did work, and that was like what my opinion was. I didn't care about the stats. I just was always trying to do work. And then at the end of the year, they like released our stats, and I had no idea that that was. I just assumed everyone else was doing what I was doing. Like I didn't realize that I was doing anything different. But yeah, so I that's hopefully that, I know I kind of started to trail off and go off on a tangent there, but yeah, I think looking back on a career and being proud of the work that I've done is, I think, a successful career.
No, and that's like I said, that makes total sense. It's you know, being proud of the work you've done. That's just kind of, again, like I said earlier, just kind of good general advice. General kind of a mindset to go from. So no, I can understand that one absolutely. What would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions that civilians have about law enforcement?
I think one of the like more common ones is um, they think we have quotas. Like I feel like that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And there may be some places that do. Like, but for where I work and like the whole state of Washington, quotas for one are illegal in Washington. I don't know if that's how it is in every state. Um, but yeah, so people think like sometimes I'll get that person I've stopped at like the last day of the month, and they think I'm doing it because it's the end of the month and I'm trying to meet my quota. And and I always tell them, like, to be honest with you, especially if they end up being one of the people I write a ticket to, I'm like, to be honest with you, if I write you this ticket or make this traffic stop, the only thing it does is create more work for me. And the other thing people think about, like at least in Washington, is they think that when I write that ticket, our fines are quite expensive. I will say our fines are expensive. Like the average traffic fine for a low level violation is $145. So compared to some other states, it's quite pricey. Um, but people think that that goes directly to like the police department or like the city that I work for. None of that money goes to us. It actually all goes to the state, and then
Mm-hmm.
they've already decided what they're doing with all those different things, and none of it's coming back to the cities. So people think that like they think that when they tell us to write a bunch of tickets to like get more money for the city. Now it doesn't. All it does is create more work for me. I have to now write a report if I write a ticket versus just making a traffic stop for warning. So it's no incentive for me to write more. My bosses don't care if I write more tickets. They could care less. They actually might like it better if I don't, because if I write more tickets, I might get more complaints that they have to deal with. So, yeah, there's no. That's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions is that there's some like personal benefit to me, my department, or our agency, or the city that I work for if we write more tickets. There's not at all. If I wrote you a ticket, you earned that ticket.
No, absolutely. And it also, with every ticket that you write, doesn't it open the door for somebody to come by and challenge it in the courts?
Yep, it
And
sure does. Yep.
and by them challenging it, that takes you off the road from being able to perform your job in order to deal with that, correct?
So for us, thankfully, it does not. Thankfully, it does not. Even if they request we be there, we don't show up. The judge just handles it. We're not We don't have a requirement to show up. That's a rule in Washington. If it goes like beyond that, like it gets further contested beyond the initial contestation, they can subpoena us to go to court. And then usually it happens on our days off, and usually it'll happen like it always happens like you've just gotten off a graveyard shift and you get 3 hours to sleep and have to go to court. That's always how it happens. But I've never been to court for a traffic ticket, and I've definitely had plenty contested, I'm sure. But yeah.
Okay. And then last question I have for this segment is, what kind of advice would you give to civilians uh, uh, if they're in an interaction with an officer?
I would say just follow. Like I don't. I'm not going to tell you you have to. Like if you've done something wrong, like don't feel like you need to incriminate yourself. It's up to Like it's up to your personal morals and ethics how much you talk to the police. But I would say the big thing for us is like just comply with what we're asking you to do. That always just makes it easier and safer for everyone, including whoever we're interacting with. Um, so like just comply with whatever they're saying, even if the officer is in the wrong. You can always address that later. Like people think that they get upset and they think, and most of the time, if you don't like, if you're not an attorney, and even some attorneys don't know, but like you might think that the officer's in the wrong in that moment, but they might actually be in the right. So the last thing you want to do too is challenge them on that and cause something else to happen where they're forced to take an enforcement action or arrest you or something like that over something you thought they were in the wrong about, but were actually in the right about, and then now you have a criminal charge for no reason. It's way easier just comply with what they're saying. Um, Even if they do something like extreme, like violate your rights or something like that, that's always something that needs to be addressed afterwards. That's something that needs to be addressed where you complain to the department, and if it's really bad, obviously get an attorney involved. Like you should do these things. If you feel like you've been wronged, you should do these things. I say that as a police officer. Police officers that do the job the right way don't want other cops doing it the wrong way. So absolutely take action if you feel like you've been wronged by a police officer. And that might end up being where the agency explains, hey, actually the officer was in the right and here's why. And even if you disagree, at least you know the answer, and it doesn't get worse. But a lot of situations escalate just from a lack of obeying like just simple police commands. And most of what we're doing, even if it comes off like really abrasive, like we're most of what we do is try to keep the scene safe. Like I can't tell you how many people I've like yelled at and given like verbal commands to do something, um, and then later found out they weren't involved at all, but like just happened to be the wrong place at the wrong time. And most of those people like they totally understand. Like obviously it's scary in the moment for them, absolutely, but like it's just we have to react. We don't know you. We don't know necessarily what's going on. Just kind of coming into it, thinking about like our mindset on that. Like we're police are thrown at a lot of like just impossible situations, and we're trying to do the best we can, and we have to make split second decisions that we're going to be judged on forever, even though it was just a split second decision that we didn't have time to think about. So yeah, I would say just cooperate with the police. Don't incriminate yourself. You don't have to do that. You obviously have your constitutional rights. But if there's anything that happens that's wrong, address it after the fact is what I would say.
No, absolutely. And there's loads of case laws, the way I understand it, that if you're given lawful commands, you're compelled to comply. One of them I can think off the top of my head. I believe it was Pennsylvania versus Mims.
Yep, that's a good one. You have to get out of the car if a police officer orders you out of the car, even
Yes.
if you're a passenger or whatever. Even if you've done nothing wrong, if an officer on a traffic stop, on a lawful traffic stop, orders you out of a car, you have to get out of the car. Yep.
Yeah. So it's one of those where, you know, like you were saying earlier, even if you are a lawyer, you have every understanding of the law, and you know that the officer's wrong and everything like that, do what they say. Just do what they
Yep.
say. Deal with it afterwards. Talk to the judge, talk to the precinct or the agency that's involved, and go from there. It's not worth sitting there and arguing it out on the side of the road.
Yep. And also too with that too, I feel like in some situations it's just a total miscommunication where you have to realize that though you know what's going on with you, you don't know what information the officer has that leads them to believe what situation is going on. So they may have different information obviously than you have, and that might lead them to take actions that would normally be inappropriate to just the situation, but because of the information they have, it actually ends up being appropriate, and you just are in the wrong place at the wrong time or just part of something unintentionally. So yeah, sometimes I feel like it happens that way, and it can just cause more issues if it makes it more unsafe for everyone, not just the officer, but anyone involved or anyone in the area.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. So, like I said, that's all the questions I had for this segment. So, let's go ahead and look back at the audience there and check out what everybody is saying. First off, let me go through some of the super chats out here. We got Rail Fanning Jonah saying, "Hello, Farmer Cop," for $4.99. Let's see. Thank you, Jonah, so very much for sending that in. Jonah also sent in a $4.99 super chat. Says, "If you can have only one mod from a mod hub, what would it be?"
It's not even out yet for 25, but Easy Dev Tools. And if that never comes out, Power Tools. I just, as a content creator, I have to have it. I can't live without it.
So pretty much every content creator I've talked to on this series here
I said
says the
that.
same exact thing.
That makes sense.
Especially if they're not somebody in my situation there where I'm a console player. If you're a
Hmm.
PC player, then it's like easy dev, easy dev, easy dev.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's see. Munchies plays with a $10 super chat. Munchies, thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it. It says, "Support for BDD and the awesome interviews and with great people. One with Farmer Cop is another great one." 100% agreed. So thank you so very much. Now let's go through the general chat there and see if we can find some more questions. Let's see. We got... Uh, let's see. I got one here from Nacho Cast. Nacho, thank you so much for sending this in. It says, "Question: I drive a decommissioned cop Charger. It still has the push bar, flood, and spotlights. How likely would it be to be pulled over?"
As long as you're not running the spotlights and the floodlights on the road, you're fine. Yeah, you're totally good. I don't like, as a cop, like I don't see like a decommissioned cop car. I'm like, I gotta stop that car. Like we don't really care. I see Crown Vics all the time. The Charger, it's cool that you have the Charger though. I don't. I have my personal car is a Charger, and I love the Charger. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. Let's see. That might be it so far. Not seeing anything else there. So let's go ahead and move on to our third and final segment called Meat and Potatoes, emphasis on potatoes. This is where we get to know you more for your content, for your channels. So starting out, I think this is probably pretty obvious, but is there anything deeper behind the username Farmer Cop?
Nope. Nope. Yep. It is just. Yep. That's what it is.
So I continue to ask that question, even though for creators like yourself, it does seem to be fairly obvious, because there was a content creator, and I cannot remember them off the top of my head, and I do apologize for that, where it seemed incredibly obvious based on their handle name, and yeah, they ended up throwing out something that was completely different than what I was even expecting. So yeah, I still ask it just in case there's that little layer deeper, the
Yep.
inception
That's
layer,
fair.
as we talk,
Yep.
as we
That.
call
Yep.
it.
Exactly.
So what was one thing when you started your channel that you really never expected, but ended up happening? And some examples that I give are the kind of sense of the community, any unexpected backlash, things like that. What were some of those things that you just never expected when you started your channel?
Oof. Yeah, the sense of community is a big one for me. I think I also never. I honestly like the biggest shock to me is that the channel is as big as it is now. Um, yeah, that's another kind of like maybe less of a shocking thing, but like I'm very well known right now in the farming server community for my tutorials. Um, my first couple of videos actually were tutorials, and they didn't do good, and they're terrible. They're still on the channel. They're the worst thing I've ever seen. Um, and I started halfway through the farming server 19 cycle, anyways. So like I just did like let's plays and like gameplay sort of content. I didn't live stream for the longest time. My first live stream was my 1,000 subscriber special. I'm pretty sure. I didn't care about live streaming. Like it wasn't a big thing. I still don't live stream very often. I'm actually live streaming tomorrow for the first time in like a long time, like a month or two. But which I'm excited to do. I really enjoy live streaming, but I just don't do it that often. It's hard to schedule with my schedule. But so yeah, just based on that, like I never thought I would kind of like get that deep into the tutorial market, but now I'm like very well known for my tutorials, and so I never that's kind of a shock to me. I didn't think that that would be the case. I thought it would be my channel's success if it was successful would be off of the gameplay, which my gameplay does fine, but like the meat and potatoes for like my channel, like 80% or more of my views come from tutorials. Like that's where it's at. And so that's why every time like a game comes out or a new feature comes out, I do tutorials right away because those just kind of sit in the background, gaining views over time, and those kind of run the channel, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And would you consider Farm Sim to be your favorite game? And if not, what would you consider your favorite game to be?
Uh, I think it is my favorite game. I when I first started my channel, I decided between two games, and I'm glad I chose Farming Simulator. I almost did a Minecraft channel because I really love Minecraft. I loved like being able to build things and create things, and I love that aspect of it. So Minecraft, I don't know if it's still my second favorite game because I haven't played it in a long time. I feel like the second place spot kind of rotates through. Actually, right now, like the game I'm loving playing, I'm doing a series on my channel of all things on GamerCop called it's a game called Drug Dealer Simulator, and it's hilarious. And it's I don't know what it is. I am loving playing that game. I'm loving every minute of it, and it's like so like it's the most it's not even that edgy, but it's the edgiest thing I've ever done on my content. And like it made me nervous to start posting it, but people seem to like it. But yeah, like I that's probably my second favorite game like at this moment, which is crazy to say because I'm just really loving playing that. Um, but yeah, Farm Sim is my favorite, and I'm glad I chose Farm Sim. I don't think I would have been successful as a Minecraft creator. I watch all the other Minecraft creators, and they're way more creative than me. I don't know how they get the ideas they do, but my ideas aren't that good. So I'm glad I chose the way I did.
Well, I remember when I saw the drug dealer simulator come popping up on the feed there, and I just started hysterically laughing the moment I saw it. It was like this is going to be a good one to watch,
Yeah,
and I
it's
wasn't
been fun.
disappointed.
Yeah, it's been fun doing that one.
So we established that you've been in the farm sim community for a very, very long time, just as a player, and more recently as the content creator that we know you for. And we established some of your most favorite maps. What were some of your least favorite maps?
The horse aggravation map. It's one of my like immediate like
No hesitation at all. You had that one at the
yeah,
ready.
I don't like that. Like I don't like to I try not to be super critical of like modded maps because I do a map tour at every single modded map that comes out pretty much with occasional things I miss here and there. And like some of those maps just aren't that good, but I recognize that they're just not good for me. But I
Hmm.
can see how other players would enjoy them, and so I try to lean on that. And I don't like to be super negative. Some of them are more negative because like there's just a lot of things broken on the maps. But even then, it's more of like the map is just broken. If they fix it, it's actually a nice map. You know, like the things that are broken. So yeah, the horse. So I don't feel bad about trashing on something that Giants made. They should make, and it's hard to trash on it too because it's a real place. So it's not like they created this place and it's just not a good idea. They just created a real place, but for me, it just I don't know why they keep bringing it back. I don't know why. Like when they should have done any other map when they did their other free one. Silver Run Forest was a great one to bring back. That's one of the best maps Giants has ever made. Um, in terms of like just the beauty of it. Uh, don't know why they brought horse aggravation back, other than maybe it was easy. Um, yeah, I know they. I also know too from like my like knowing what I know about giants is they do like the actual people that work at that facility. They actually use that map in Farming Simulator for training to like
Really?
train new employees. Yeah, they use it for like to train new employees where things are and things like that, which is really cool. So I don't know if they brought it back mostly because they wanted them to have the newer version of the map for the new game. I could see that, and I don't like. It's my least favorite map, and I'll never play on it. The most time I've spent on it is to do a map tour every time they release it. That's the most time I've ever spent on it, and I'll never spend any more time on it. Um, but like, and even then, like, it's not like a strong hate. It's not like I'm angry that they brought it out. I'm just like, why that map? Like, and part of it is because I know how negative the comments were going to be on any video about that map. And I have a joke with a couple of Giants employees to remain nameless. We call it the horse aggravation map instead of aggravation. So that's which yeah. So anyhow, that should say it enough. There's people even at Giants that aren't super pro that map, but yeah.
So on Sundays, I run a show called Agribusiness Tonight, and we do news, mods, maps, things like that. And I kind of went on a little bit of a rant, both on Silver Run Forest and on Horse Aggravation. Um, I think Silver Run, you're spot on. It is one of the prettiest maps that Giants has come out with. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. But I went on a rant because, again, I'm a console player, and I don't know if you paid attention to how large that file is.
Yep. No, I had a lot of console players angry. And I even learned something through that. I was like, well, I mean, I learned that you guys have separate space for games and for mods. I
Correct.
didn't know that. I thought in my head I was like, why does it matter if they just add it to an update to the game versus a mod? It all takes space because that's how a computer works. Obviously, it's like, well, if it's on there, like it's on, like like my computer has this, it doesn't affect it, So like I learned that from that, and I probably looked like an idiot in the comments. I was like, well, if they did it the other way, like it would still take up that space. And people are like, you don't know how console works, do you? It's like apparently not. So I actually learned something from it. So if anything good came out of it, that. But yes, the file size is huge, massive,
Yeah.
massive for a map. And I'm like, how is this? Like I feel like the year one expansion when it originally came out with more stuff, I feel like that file size wasn't that big. So I don't know what they did to that map, but it's crazy.
I have no earthly clue, but I actually, because I'm that big of a nerd, I did the calculations and found out that it was 1/8 the storage space for us console players. And yeah, like I said, I kind of went on a little bit of rant, and I did the same thing when it came to the horse aggravation, but to less of a degree. But no, I agree with both of your statements, both on Silver Run and Horse. I'm right there with you. I have no idea why Horse is still a thing, but also what you're saying also would make sense as well, is to kind of
Yeah.
bring it in for those reasons. So, of the maps that have been announced up until this point in time for FS25, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Hmm. That's a tough one. Um, right now, and I know because I follow Gamer Granny Tana's channel. I know Four Fields is going to come out any day. I'm shocked it didn't come out this week.
Came out today.
Uh, did it come out today?
It did.
They released mods so late today. That's
Yes.
the other thing. I've been complaining about how late. I normally when I wake up at like 7 or 8 in the morning, mods are out. My
Hmm.
time at least. But now, like, I'll check it and there's nothing, and I'm like, oh no, mods. See, this is ridiculous. Now I got to do a map tour tomorrow morning. That's fine. It's gonna be great. But I was super excited about that one to come out. So I guess and it's not even because I'm excited to play on it or anything like that. I just think it's a really good map. But I think the only one that really like, I guess I'm not super familiar with everything that everyone's working on. I can think of some like maps that I would love to see come back. Like obviously I mentioned Western Wilds. Love to see Griffin, Indiana come back. I hope that they get that back. Um, yeah, those are a couple great ones there. I think honestly, I'm really excited to. As much as I just bashed on Giants for the horse map, I'm really excited for the year one expansion map. and I have no information. Like even like as a Giants Gold partner, I don't have anything secret for you guys about like what it, like they haven't told us a darn thing. Like I have nothing secret that I know. Like I have no idea what it's going to look like past like the very vague image we've given, and we're assuming it's a UK map. And I don't normally play on UK maps, but like if it's going to be anything as like beautiful and detailed as like Riverbend Springs, I think it's going to be a really cool map. So I'm super excited for that one. I'm curious what it's going to look like.
I'm right there with you. I've only recently started to actually kind of fall in love with the kind of UK style of maps. But just from that screenshot that they sent us, in the year one, season pass and all that, it just there's a lot of little things in there that's like, okay, if it's even half as good as I've got this built up in my brain, it's going to be a good one. So, keeping our fingers crossed on that one.
There's
Um,
actually another map. I know the Shanty Boys talked about it. I'm really excited to see Angela Hollow come out.
yes.
I did a map tour on that, and that one was, and so I felt that's one of my favorite Shanty Boys maps ever. That map is gorgeous, and Mr. T-Bone did a really good job on it. So that's another one I'm really excited to come out, and I hope that they get that out for all platforms. So yeah,
Oh, for sure. I always look forward to whenever I see a Shanty Boys map come out because it's just good stuff. They've got a good general style with however they kind of lay out their stuff. So yeah, I always look forward to their stuff. So before FS25 was released, what was the one feature that you were the most excited for?
the new AI worker system. I use AI workers a lot because like I feel like when I play on a farm, like most of what I like to do is kind of manage the farm and serve in like a farm manager role. Um, so I being able to just hire a worker on most fields, even weird ones, and them just for the most part doing a really good job. And I know some people have had a lot of issues with it, but honestly, like it's very rare for me to have an issue with them. Like I use them constantly, and like I rarely have issues with them. Sometimes I still do, but for the most part, I don't have issues with them. So I know some people have had a lot of issues with it. But yeah, GPS. I know that that was a big one for a lot of people. I didn't care about it. It didn't matter to me. Um, I just didn't care that much. And even as like a PC player, like Courseplay is obviously available, and it's like a better version of the AI worker system. Um, and I've used Courseplay before, but I just think I just wanted it more simplified. Courseplay is pretty complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I like how simplified. Like I can get most things done with how simplified the AI system is. But yeah, I think that's probably the big feature for me that stands out the most. I of course was excited that we're getting new crops and things like that, but honestly, I haven't done a lot of the new crops. I've done quite a bit of rice, but not really a lot of the other new crops. So yeah, the big thing I think was it was definitely the AI worker system.
Yeah, no, and I'm right there with you. That was one of the features I was like most excited for, especially again console player. Getting a Courseplay Lite was exciting.
Yeah.
So that was a big one for me. What was one feature that you were the most excited about, but quickly soured on after getting to actually play FS25?
Pastures grazing. Um, there is a way around it. I know now. Like if you put the grass down yourself and then put the field down or the pasture down and tell it not to plant a pasture, it will theoretically regrow and it works. But I still think it's a broken feature. I feel like if I say you're planting a pasture and then it gives me at midnight or whatever the amount of grass that's in there, and then they're slowly eating it, I feel like at a certain point it should start to recover. Even if it required me to remove the animals and move them to a different pasture temporarily and then it recovered over time, I would be okay with that. But the fact that it doesn't recover, I just think it's a broken feature. Very cool, but a broken feature. And also the fact that you can make animal like cow pastures and water buffalo pastures and stuff like that and allow them to graze, but it does nothing for them. It's just useless. They're just eating food and they gain no health and like that's not how cows are in real life. So
Mm-hmm.
it just that's what it drives me crazy. I'm like, no, you like I feel like they just it was such a cool feature and they just missed the shot on it, you know? Like they just missed it. So hopefully it'll get fixed. And I'm sure there'll be script mods and stuff for PC that'll come out that'll fix it. to where it needs to be, but unfortunately, console players are screwed until Giants decides to fix it.
No, absolutely. So before we continue, I normally try to keep the interviews to about 2 hours. We're about a half hour past that, and I want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time. I do have several more questions if you want to keep going, or
I'm totally good. This is I if you have to go or anything like that, that's totally fine. I'm good with whatever, but I don't have any restrictions. And
okay.
I know just real quick while we have a little break here, Ken Adlam in the chat asked if I had ever delivered a baby before. I have not. So there you go. I'm assuming you meant at work. In work or in my personal life, I've never delivered a baby. Both answers are no. There's not like, well, I did it once, here, but not at work or something. No, I've never delivered a baby. So just wanted to answer that quick because he put it up there. He was pretty excited for that question. So there you go.
That would definitely be a story worth telling.
Yes, that would be something.
Okay, well, no, that's fantastic. No, I don't have anywhere to be, so yeah, let's keep going. So let's see, where was I? Oh, okay, here we go. So, what was one thing that was not in FS that or FS25 that you really wish was?
Whew, I always struggle to answer questions like that because for me, anytime there's like a new feature, I'm just excited we got a new feature. I know some people, like especially like some of the more like realism players, like they have this high expectation of where they want Farm Sim to go, and so they have like if you ask them like, hey, what are some features you want? They'd have a list of like 73 features that they've been waiting for forever that aren't in the game. Like for me, like I don't often think about or like think about what's not there. I think about what is there, and I'm excited about what's new anytime they release like a DLC or something new comes to the game. So like honestly, like I think in terms of like features, like I think the only thing like I can really like regularly think of, and this isn't even a big thing, I wish the like finances screens and stuff like that. I wish that those were more detailed and more intuitive. Like right now, you can't go back and look at your old finances from previous times. I wish you
Hmm.
could be like, all right, hey, let me hit a button that's what's this year look like for the farm? Okay, oh, I bought new vehicles. Click on that. What are the new vehicles I bought? I want to see where because as like wanting to play games for like the business management aspect of it, I want more information there than I get a lot of the time. So I'd like that. I also wish you could finance buildings, finance land, finance vehicles. There's a mod out there to finance vehicles now, and I use it. But that's a very obviously realistic way in the real world. Like most people don't just go out and be like, "Yep, I'm going to buy this 500,000 piece of land." They're going to finance it some way. So I think that would be cool. And you could like maybe set a down payment that you wanted to put, and then try to get I don't know. I just would like to see more stuff like that. That's maybe it's less involved with the farming. So some people just don't care about that stuff. But yeah, I would love to see stuff like that.
And what kind of maps do you prefer to play on? Do you prefer kind of the more American, wide open style, or do you prefer like the kind of tight, compact, UK style yards or things like that?
I've played on like all sorts of different maps. I think I tend to lean more towards American maps, and I think that's because like I've had my grandparents had like a ranch in Montana, and so like seeing like wide open fields and like that more American style, like it just feels more nostalgic, and I really want to play on that style of map. But I also enjoy like occasionally I'll do a UK map series. I haven't done one in a while actually, but I'll do one because it's more of a challenge and it's something different. Like it just kind of changes up my play style and it forces me to play differently because you just can't use the same equipment. But I think my favorite style of map that I actually don't play on it as much as maybe American maps is like I love like start from scratch maps and forestry maps. And I say that as someone I love forestry maps, but I hate forestry, which is it's a contradiction. When I look at and I say this every time I do it, like a Shanty Boys early access map tour of one of their forestry maps. Um, I love those maps because what I see when I am going on that map is like I see spots where I'm like, oh, I'd love to start like a farm homestead there and like build up a farm from like clearing the trees. Like I don't want to do forestry like just only forestry, but I love like I did a series where like I cut down trees and built a farm on a forestry map and built a huge farming like empire on this forestry map where I deforested like a quarter of the map to build this farm. And so like I love that sort of stuff because I or like No Man's Land again I mentioned that one. I like to be able to just kind of plow my way through the land and make it kind of my own and customize things and build things the way I want them. I don't mind being given a starting farm on a map, but I almost always will eventually build my own farm somewhere else. And whether I have to buy a field to do that and destroy the field, like I love building my own farm and making it my own.
I gotcha. And what style of farming do you prefer? Do you prefer to do arables, forestry, grass care?
Arable is definitely my favorite. I only like to really do grass work as a necessity if I'm taking care of animals. That's really the only time I like to do grass work. I mostly like to do arable farming, I think. And mostly just like the basics, like just grain crops and stuff like that, or corn, sunflowers. Like I don't even like to get too far into like the advanced or the more complicated or more specialized crops. I will, of course, but like I think just grain crops are great.
Okay. And thinking of like the contract system, what would be your most favorite job to do in regards to like contracts?
Oh, I feel like in general, my go-to is like fertilizing contracts because I feel like in general you can get them done quicker and they pay out fairly well. I also really enjoy harvesting contracts because you always get a bonus at the end. The little extra crop you get. So I love doing those. Yeah, those are probably my two favorite ones. I've been doing a ton of contracts on my series on Huton Pantai. I've been doing so many contracts on there, in fact, that I made a rule on my Frankenmuth series that I'm not allowed to do contracts. I have to make my money myself because I knew that with the contracts on there being so high paying for most of them, I would just be knocking out contracts the whole time because it's hard to say no to a big contract. But yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure. It's you see those big dollar signs and you want to go after it right away.
oh yeah,
Especially if it's like a fertilizing contract where you're able to just send a few passes through and it's done and it's like ka-ching.
yep.
Uh, what about the opposite end of that spectrum? What's your least favorite job?
My least favorite contracts are I've never I to this day on Farm December 25 or any other I've never done a log transporting contract. I'll never do it. Don't want to lift the log. Don't want to deal with them. Nope. Couldn't pay me enough. Won't ever move logs around. I don't mind doing the occasional deadwood contract. I just grab a chainsaw, go cut some trees down. That's fine. Some people will say, well, you can take those trees and do something with them with your own, sawmill or whatever, or sell them. I'm like, nope, not me. They're gonna stay right where they're at. Don't want to move them. Don't want to deal with them. But yeah, don't want to move logs. Least favorite contract for sure.
I can understand that. Absolutely. Um, so, as a content creator, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's looking to start in the content creation field?
I get that question a lot, and I think the main thing is you just have to start. There's always going to be a million reasons to not start. Even when I had just made the decision that I wanted to start a channel, it took me like 2 or 3 months before I actually did it. Um, like you'll tell yourself stuff like, okay, well, I need to like learn more and do more and like get better at what I'm doing first. But like go back and watch any content creator's first couple of videos. Um, and I guarantee they're bad. And if they're not bad, it's because you're watching the Farm Sim Guys channel or that person deleted their first few videos. Those are the two reasons. There's no other reasons. The Farm Sim guy cheated because he had a job, like he already knew editing and graphic design before he got into this. So it wasn't fair. But for the rest of us, the content's going to start out not great, which is okay. You learn from it. You're not going to put out a perfect product. And you really don't know what people want until you start putting stuff out. So I think the biggest thing is you just have to start. And a lot of people think you have to have like really fancy equipment. I mean, I had like a okay gaming computer that could record like in 1080p barely, and that was fine to start. And then I mean, there's a Yeti mic right here, and then I have a really nice mic. Actually, behind this blanket right here, I have an entirely different recording setup right back there, where I do a lot of my gamer cop stuff on a different setup. Um, but yeah, like I bought like a $12 cheap microphone off of Amazon and that was my only investment because I already owned Farming Simulator. OBS was free. I used a free editing software that crashed every 3 minutes, and it was obnoxious, but I did it. And like it was, like you don't. It's not rocket science, really. Um, you just got to start. Like people, there's always a million reasons that you think you shouldn't start, or you shouldn't do it, but you just got to do it. And also too with that, I'd say just be true to yourself. Don't don't try to act or do something like that. And you should never go into it with the expectation that you're going to get rich. I feel like there's a lot of creators that go into it and they want to make it a job so desperately that it robs them of any success they could have because people can feel that. If you go into it just kind of, where is this going to take me? And it's not a bad thing to want that, but if that's your sole purpose for doing it, I can almost guarantee that your success is going to be very limited. Um, it's not a get rich quick scheme. Um, like the amount of hours, like yes, I've been doing this for 5 years and I have almost 180,000 subscribers, but that's for one, that's not everyone, that's rare, and two, with that, like it's not like I got here without a lot of work. My first 1,000 subscribers, it took me almost a year to get them, and that was me putting in like 20 to 30 hours a week, just grinding and doing content and putting in a ton of work. And that was before, like, obviously I was monetized. And so, like, there's no reward other than the satisfaction of what you've accomplished and what you've done. So you just have to start it, be true to yourself, and realize it's not a get rich quick scheme. Because if you think it's a get rich quick scheme too, or it's a way to like make a lot of money, you're just going to be, honestly, it's just, you're setting yourself up for failure and you're just going to be upset because because until you get rich doing it, which you may never do, you're always going to be upset with it. And so I think it just robs you of a lot of joy doing it. Just enjoy it. Do content that you want to do. Because if you're also doing content that you hate, people are going to pick up on that too. Do something you want. And yeah, hopefully that's some good advice for people. But that's usually what I tell people is like, you be true to yourself. Don't think about it as a way to get money and just start.
Absolutely. And I'll double up on what you were saying right there with kind of a quick story about my journey. When I first started, I ended up starting recording to Twitch directly from my system using the in-game headset kind of thing, and then downloading from Twitch, re-uploading to YouTube after making the edits and stuff that I wanted to make. And everything was terrible. It was awful. Absolutely awful. It sounded like I was recording from a potato. And yeah, yeah, I 100% agree with you right there. Just start. Just start. Everybody starts out terrible unless unless you're the creator that you said and
Yep.
cannot.
He cheated. It's fine.
He cheated.
He knows I'd say that about him. He knows who he is. He knows what he's done. I love the farm sim guy. He's such a cool guy. But every time I watch his content, I'm like, I don't know how he's not 4 times the size my channel is. But
So, what would you say is the most memorable moment of your content creation career so far?
I think it was when I hit 100,000 subscribers. I think that was the biggest thing because I feel like the first milestone that you shoot for is 1,000 subscribers, and I feel like that's a milestone that YouTube has kind of put for us because that's when you can get like fully monetized and fully up and running, and so like that's a big milestone for people there. Um, when I when I like kind of knew that my channel was eventually going to grow to 100,000 subs, it's still like it still blows my mind to this day. Like it just blows my mind. And I remember when I hit 100,000 subscribers, it was in March. It was like 2 days from my channel's, I want to say my channel's 3 year anniversary, 3 or 4 year anniversary. I think it was 3 years. Yeah, I think it was a 3 year anniversary. It was only a couple days away from that. I was in Boston at PAX East, and it was when I was having dinner with DJ Goham, Clutch Simulations, and I believe Kermit was there from Giant Software and a couple other guys, and like we were having dinner and like I hit it there while we were hanging out, and like it was such a cool feeling to like just especially to have them there while it all happened. Like the timing couldn't have been better. It was like I couldn't have been it couldn't have been a better time to have it. But I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
That's awesome. So, who would you consider to be your favorite map maker?
I my instinct is Alien Jim. Um, that's my like my gut reaction is Alien Jim. Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's Alien Jim, and then I think a close second to that is going to be the Shanty Boys. And I think that comes a lot from like our relationship that we have and how like just knowing those guys. And then like even like also another like close second to Alien Jim. I don't know Alien Jim personally. I just love his maps. But like Omatana also falls in there too. Like she's not as well known for her maps as she is for her other mods, but the mods or the maps and mods that like those guys create, both Omatana and the Shanty Boys, they become more real if you know the people for real. Like you know they, because then when you like, oh, okay, especially like I love that Omatana on her channel, she does videos on her maps and stuff like that, and I or on her mods and her maps, and I love watching those videos because she explains her inspiration and like her thought process, and like that just makes the map like so many like small details that she thought about that like you just would kind of just pass by as a player, and so like for me that's such a cool thing. I wish every map maker did that about every one of their maps and like talked about their inspiration like that. But yeah, so yeah, I think Alien Jim closely followed by Omatana and the Shanty Boys. I think that's how it's got to be.
I gotcha. And you'd mentioned before how Mr. CLP was the creator who kind of inspired you. Was there something specific about him that inspired you to create your channel?
I just loved how like real, genuine he just seemed like watching his content. Like you felt like you got to know him. Like I felt like before I actually met him in person and like got to really know him because now he's one of my closest friends as well. Because we've done so many events together. I'm excited to go to FarmCon with him this year, and I'm actually flying out to the UK on my way to FarmCon so I can fly over with them to Austria where it's at, and we're gonna hang out in London for a day. And I'm so excited for that, like just to get to spend time with those guys. Well, I say those guys, Mr. Silly P and his wife. His wife's also fantastic. Um, but yeah, like he's so genuine and so just he's just a regular guy, you know. Like you felt like I felt like I could relate to him. I felt like I got to know him. I loved like his style. It was very chill. It was relaxed. He made like progress on his farms. I loved his thought process and how he did things. Um, yeah, it was great. Like he seemed like the kind of guy that you're like, boy, I would love to just get to know this guy. And I felt like it became even better when like I've every single content creator I've met in real life are exact like they're the same person that they are on camera. Like it was like really reassuring because it's obviously nervous. It's nerve wracking to meet someone like that. Especially I look up to all those guys, and it's nerve wracking to meet them in person. And you're like, okay, well, are they going to be? You know, how are they actually going to be in person, right? But the more I've gotten to know those guys, like they're so genuine to who they are in their channels, which is super cool. Just a side note about that. But yeah, Mr. Silly P's, yeah, that was I think there's a lot of things I think I liked about the way he did things.
So it's funny because leading into these interviews, I do a bit of research, comb through channels and stuff like that. If they're a content creator like yourself, if they're a modder or something, I'll go through like any kind of Facebook pages or anything that I can dig up information about. And I had just so happened to go onto your channel. It was actually earlier today. I was on my lunch break, and I actually came across a short of you and DJ Goham. It looked like you were sitting on Mr. Sealy P's couch
Yep.
and kind of sitting there giggling amongst each other. It's like we're here, Mr. Sealy P's, and it was just
Yep.
I laughed really hard when I saw that.
And like I love that too because me and DJ and I both like just go crazy fanboy over Mr. Silly P. It's gotten better as we get to know him more. Like we see him more as like a peer. We still really look up and admire the guy, but he's just like such a chill guy. Like he's one of the most humble people I've ever met. Like he always talks about like because he's inspired a ton of people to start their channels or has been part of people's inspiration. Yeah, exactly. And I know you mentioned him as being that for you as well, and he is like he loves it when people tell him that, not because it makes him feel good, but it just you can see him like just get emotional and it like really humble him, and like he's just so humble about how many people he's affected, and doesn't he's not arrogant at all about it and doesn't think he's any better than anyone, And like the way DJ and I react to him, I mean DJ's channel's about almost twice the size of mine, but I pass Mr. Silly P in subscribers. Like I have 60 or so thousand more subscribers than he has, but we still always look up to him. Like it's also just goes to show that subscriber count it really is just a number. Um, it doesn't there's no less or more value that you offer to the community because of your subscriber count or your views. It's who you are. That's what offers the value.
That's that's really cool to hear. It's very how do I want to say this? It's very awesome to hear that it's not one of those, careful about meeting your heroes kind of thing. That, Mr. CLP, DJ Goham, yourself even, all throughout this whole process, getting to know you for this, several hours that we've spoken today and, speaking a little bit before, it's really kind of I don't want to say a breath of fresh air, but almost it's been an amazing experience, and you say that you continue to look up to him, even though you see him as a peer, you know, not to toot your horn too hard, but again, it was one of those, creators like yourself, creators like Mr. CLP, DJ Goham, you all were the ones that inspired me as well. So it's one of those that, getting to kind of experience that, here today and, hearing that, other creators like DJ, like Mr. CLP and so on and so forth, are all kind of the people that we kind of see through the lens. It's very nice to hear that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of creators that started like in COVID, and even when like and I got to know some of them like around that time as like all of our channels were growing a little bit. And like I think of like Farm Sim Snowy as one of those guys, and like Rusty Money as one of those guys, but and like those guys became like friends of mine, and it wasn't like, yeah, my channel shot past them in terms of like numeric growth, but it wasn't like after that happened I was like, yep, I'm too good for you guys. Like it wasn't like I still love those guys. Like there's no it doesn't the numbers just don't they really don't matter at the end of the day. Like it doesn't that's not what makes this what it is. It's the community overall. So like those guys I still consider them to be as much skin in the game and as valuable as content creators as me or anyone else. Like the numbers they just don't matter. And I think people get too wrapped up in the numbers. They look at like me or like DJ Goham or like any of the bigger guys. Like they look at their subscriber count and they think of them like as these, like super far off people that they can't reach. Like if you ever see us in person, like please talk to us. Like we will make the time for you. Like there's no one that's beneath us or anything like that. Like and all of those guys feel that way. And that's just how it like any one of those guys. If you run into them or you get to go to an event, like when we were at FarmCon this last year, like we spent we were trying to do work, but we just didn't get anything done. We were too busy talking to people, like, and that was more worth it anyways. So if you ever run into any of us, please talk to us. We really are who we are on camera, and if you ever meet us in person, you'll see all of that. So, yeah, and that's for just anyone out there, fans, other content creators, anything.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really fantastic. The last question I've got for this segment, if you had the ability to make a map of real life, you had all the prerequisite knowledge, you knew exactly what you were doing when it came to the coding, the visualizations, all that, where would you base it off of and why?
My grandparents' farm in Montana, their ranch. And I think that's just a nostalgic thing. I would be just so cool to like get to be able to create and change and do things and like farm or feel like you're farming on that area in real life or in the game. I think the nostalgia for that, I love it because I used to go out there like as a kid. I'd go out there and help my grandpa work on the ranch in like the summers and stuff. It's like fantastic memories there. So I would that's what I do. I'd have a map of my grandparents' farm for sure.
Would it ever be something you'd consider to reach out to a map maker to try and, actually bring into the game or?
Honestly, I've never even thought about that. I also think about like that area for like I I don't even know if I would ask only because the area is unless they made the map pretty big, which would be a lot more work. I think it would be difficult to like have enough value for every player to have a reason to want to farm on it. Like it'd be very cool for me to farm on it, but it may not be so cool for everyone else. And I would never want to ask like if I ever like got to a point where I could afford to like hire a map maker to pay them by the hour to make it, maybe that would be great. But like I wouldn't want them to work on a project that was for me when they could be doing stuff that benefits the whole community, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That makes total sense. Like I said, that was the last question I had for that segment. So let's once again take a look at the chat and see what people are saying out there. So let's see. Oh, I see where Ken was asking about the baby. Let's see. So let's go back to the general chat just real quick. Let's see. Let's see. Gaming with JJ says, I had asked if Farmer Cop had ever not wrote a ticket that he later wishes he had.
Yes, yes. I one time I actually remember like one specific instance. I stopped this guy while I was at work for driving on a suspended license. Well, I stopped him for some other minor violation, then found out their license was suspended, so it was a misdemeanor for them to drive. And they like had a really good reason for why they were driving, and like I understood, but I was like, okay. And like for whatever reason, I felt super nice, and I was like, I was like, all right, I'm gonna give you a warning today. You're not to drive. If I see you driving again, I'm gonna, while I'm working, I'm gonna give you a criminal citation, and you're gonna have to go to court for this. And they were so thankful and like, okay, thank you so much. And then I was on my way home from that shift, and I saw them driving. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "If I see them driving at work, I'm definitely giving them a. I'm gonna take them to probably take them to jail for it." And what it's really sad too because they honestly they ruined it for everyone else. I have not. That was like 4 years ago, and I have not warned a suspended driver since. I have not
Mm.
warned one since.
It's
Yeah.
amazing how the actions of the few can ruin it for so many other people. It's
Yep.
incredible.
Because every single person I stop for driving suspended has a really good reason why they're driving. And I'm like, well, I don't, you're going to drive again. I just know you are. And I've had people that one time I stopped a guy for driving suspended, gave him a criminal citation, let him go, told him not to drive. He was in a parking lot, so he didn't need to go anywhere. And my coworker stopped him 5 minutes later for driving because they had backed me up on my traffic stop and we both went separate directions. And the guy left the parking lot and went their direction. And where they were parked, they drove right past him and he was like, and then stopped him again. And so we got two criminal citations 10 minutes apart. I was like, some of the stuff in this job you can't make up. I've seen people get arrested 3 times in one night for DUI.
Whoa.
They get arrested, they get processed, they get booked, they get released, or twice. Sorry, twice for DUI. There was one person that was a minor operating a motor vehicle that got arrested 3 times, but the DUI was twice. Then they got released. They walked back to their car, got in it, drove again. The officer was like, "Well, you were a .22 2 hours ago, so I know you're still over the legal limit and can't drive." So they got stopped again. I
Wow.
don't. Oh, I don't know. You can't make it up. You
Well,
can't make it up.
and that's one of the offenses that personally just really drives me up a wall. If you're going out there and drunk driving or anything like that, like it is by far the most selfish thing that an individual can do uh, to the community they belong in.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it's
I
just
actually, and I even forgot that in my one of the things I have extra training in is DUI investigations. And so we have what's called A Ride, which is Advanced Roadside Impaired Driver Enforcement, which is like an extra class you can take. So I have that, and then I also have like extra classes in addition to that for like marijuana specific DUIs and other specific DUIs. So like I'm one of our officers in our department that's like good at drug DUIs and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I've arrested a lot of DUIs, and especially like even in like the town that I work in, like there's never a reason. Like most of the time, people can walk. We have cab services and public transit. Like it's not. It's, there's Uber. Like there's so many other better choices. Yeah.
Well, and you nailed it right there. I mean, in the world that we live in, the modern era, there's Uber, there's Lyft, there's cabs, there's so many different options. For somebody to go out there and to be able to just not do something as stupid as get behind the wheel after being impaired
Yeah.
is that one really like grinds my gears something fierce because I mean when I first moved down here, this would have been back in 2006, I think. There was several occasions where I'd almost been completely taken out by somebody who was impaired. Just you could just see them going down the road, just weaving, unable to maintain their lane and all that stuff, and they just do something erratic that you can't predict. And it's one of those you got to just back off and give them as much space as you possibly can. And it's just
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I arrested a 19-year-old girl for DUI. Well, they called me in to do the investigation after it happened because this girl would been she was driving drunk. She was a .24, so she was three times the legal limit in Washington. And I mean, she's only 19, so she shouldn't have been drinking anyways. And she came out of her apartment complex parking lot, drove up the road, hit a light pole, then hit a fire hydrant, and then ran two people over, and then took off. And yeah, and so they think the only reason those two people lived, because they were just pedestrians, the only reason they lived is because right before she hit them, she hit the light pole and the fire hydrant. And I was able to articulate and show, like, mathematically why that's how it was, because she was probably going 35 when she hit the light pole, and by the time she hit them, she couldn't have been going more than 15 miles an hour. So like the
wow,
only reason she got slow, if she had hit him at 35, it would have been game over.
yeah.
So it was like it was just crazy. But yeah, awful stuff. But thankfully they were okay in the end. They had some significant injuries, but they're gonna they're made a full recovery and are good now. But it's crazy, all just for this one poor decision like that. And then obviously she got charged. She ended up getting charged with four felonies and four misdemeanors, like for
Hmm.
that whole scenario. Two counts of hit and run, felony hit and run, two counts of misdemeanor hit and run, DUI, two counts of vehicular assault. And yeah, it was just a lot of stuff. But yeah, all over one silly thing. Like honestly, yeah, it sounds it's for people that have made the mistake and gotten arrested for DUI. Like it sounds very crass to say that you're lucky that you got a DUI, but you were lucky that that's all it was. Like it could have
Hmm.
been far worse. Um, yeah, it's awful.
Well, my disdain for it came from when I was growing up in the small town that I grew up in. Uh, my girlfriend at the time had a friend who they were pretty much inseparable. But she was the typical kind of party girl, and she would go out and get completely hammered, and then be driving around. Well, one day in the small town, she was going home at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning after all the bars had closed down. She was way too impaired to be driving, and she ended up hitting somebody who was walking on the side of the road. Hit and run. She took off. Left him there to to expire, unfortunately. And yeah, it was one of those where I knew her personally. I knew that it was just a kind of based on the stories, because I didn't hang out with her. She was just not the kind
Yeah,
of person that I would have associated with. But her and my girlfriend at the time, where they were like really really good friends, I kept telling my girlfriend at the time, it's like, don't go out with her. Just don't do it. It's going to end badly. Somebody's going to get hurt, and she's going to be the
yeah,
reason why. And in literally within, matter of months, that happened, and she's still in prison to this day, as far as I'm aware.
yeah. It's life changing to just get arrested for DUI, but it can be so much worse if something bad happens. And like yeah, and obviously for that person's family that got just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's awful. Yeah, I've handled so many collisions from DUIs and stuff like that, and it's awful. It's really awful. But yeah,
One last quick question. What would you say is the kind of, we'll say, the dumbest like incident that you had in law enforcement? You know, dealing with somebody, like something that could have been completely avoided, uh, but just for some reason they just stupidity took over.
Oh man, I mean, I feel like that's like a third of the people I've arrested. Like they're just, oh man. I'm sure there's a lot, and I'm sure a lot of like specific stories aren't coming to mind, but one story, like I saw this. I was driving, just driving patrol through a neighborhood, and I saw this person had an open container of alcohol, and you're not allowed to have an open container in our city. So I was just, I wasn't even going to get out and talk to them, but they saw me, and then they threw it, like they littered it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to get out and tell them to go pick it up and move on with their day. I get out of my car and I say, hey, I need to talk to you for a second. You're not free to leave. And they took off running. And I was like, oh, they must be like underage or something. So I took off running after them. And I caught them, of course, because they were intoxicated and I was sober and in shape, so it worked out. I'm not as in good shape now, but back then I was in shape. So I caught them and found out like they were over the age of they were over the age of 21, and so they didn't get in trouble for the alcohol. They got in trouble for running from me. It's like it was like so like you could have. I was just gonna warn you. I was just gonna warn you if you just not had ran from me. I had another officer that I just happened to back him up on this one. He sees something similar. This kid is walking and then like throws this bag of wine onto the ground, and then gets gets out of his car, stops the guy. The kid's cooperative, and the officer's like, "Hey, are you 21?" And he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm 20." And he's like, "Okay, well, and he gets his ID. He's like, "All right, well, right now you're under arrest for minor in possession of alcohol." He gets him cuffed up. He searches him. He finds cocaine on him, and then finds his wallet. Turns out he's actually over the age of 21. He's 22.
Mm.
So if he had just said, "Hey, he just for some reason in his head, and who knows, he could have been. I mean, I'm sure he had used some of that product as well. So if he had just said, "Yeah, I'm 22," and showed his ID, the officer would have never searched him. Would have never found that. And it's just like, why? Yeah.
It's it's amazing how, in order for people to try and avoid trouble, they get themselves in trouble.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yeah, they're really good at it.
and it's very oftentimes, if you sit there and you talk to the officer like they're a human being and you just tell them the truth, it's all going to work out fine. Like,
Yep.
unless you did something that was so egregious that, well, number one, there's no reason to sit there and lie. You're
Right.
oftentimes going to dig yourself into a bigger hole than what it was to just told the truth, regardless
Yep.
of what it is that you were being pulled over for, stopped, or whatever. But it's one of those where, had you just told the truth and you just kind of did your thing, more oftentimes than not, you're gonna just be let off with a warning. And worst case scenario, you're just gonna get booked in, put through the process, and then
Yeah.
sent on your way.
Yeah. It like anytime we stop someone, like you're gonna get them. Like that's if everything goes the worst case scenario for you and you don't do anything different, like what could like we've seen what we've seen and what's going to happen could potentially happen. The best case scenario is we warn you for everything, but you can once we've decided to talk to you, you're the only person really that can make it worse for yourself. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
if yeah, so like we've the worst case scenario, if we decide to arrest and like if we hammer everyone for every violation we see, that's the worst case scenario when you get stopped. Is you get the tickets or the misdemeanor citation or whatever it is for whatever you did. But but you can always up the ante. It's always up to people to do that.
Absolutely. Benji, thank you for your question. Says, what is the difference between DUI and DWI?
Great question. That's a very common question. There's not a lot of difference. So Washington has a DUI law and not a DWI law. DUI stands for driving under the influence. DWI stands for driving while intoxicated. a lot of states that have DWI laws, they have a separate law for drug DUIs or for drug driving offenses. And DWI usually is specific to alcohol. For the states that have DUI laws, it's usually drugs and or alcohol. They put it under the same law, if that makes sense. It's mostly just a phrasing thing. Some states like it's very ingrained in them. It's a DWI. In some places it's a DUI. They're basically interchangeable for the most part. Um, but if there is a difference, usually it's because the DUI will encompass drugs and alcohol, and the DWI will be just alcohol, and those states will have a separate law for drugs, if that makes sense. But great
Yeah.
question. Yeah, that's a common one that confuses people.
So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I tend to do is I watch a lot of body cams and stuff like that. And for the most part, seeing a bunch of, drunks or people on drugs, getting stopped and, ran through their tests and all that stuff. And one of the things that I hear very often, which I guess as an outsider looking in, I don't understand, is you'll get the drunk, getting belligerent because they'll sit there and say, I passed it, I did this, I did everything, and it's very clear that they didn't. But very often I hear as a response is it's not based off of pass or fail. It's not a pass fail. Can you, one, do you understand what it is I'm saying there, and two, can you
Yes.
elaborate on that?
Yes. So we do when we have someone that we suspect is driving under the influence. We'll just stick to alcohol because drugs throws in a whole complication because there's different tests we do for drugs. We do the same test, but we do plus additional tests, and we're looking for completely different things. But if we have like your standard DUI that's alcohol related, we do the standardized field sobriety test, which we start with the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, which is us looking at your eyes. Um, and then we do the walk and turn test, which most people are familiar with that. And then we do the one leg stand test. Those are the three standard ones. And then, if they're willing to, at least in our state, it's voluntary. You don't have to provide it as a breath sample on the side of the road. You can say no to us. It's totally within your right in the state of Washington to say no to that test. When we get back to the station, however, if you're under arrest, you no longer can say no to that test. And if you say no to that test, what I have to do then is get a search warrant, and I actually get a search warrant for your blood, and I take your blood. And then I test it that way, and I actually get a better result. So it usually goes in their favor to blow into the machine. Um, but regardless of that, on the field, we're making our arrest decision based on the totality of the circumstances, which might be a phrase that like people have heard before. But basically, what that means is we're looking at all of the information that we have, and we're making our best decision based on that. We don't have to have You don't have to do any of those field sobriety tests, and we can still arrest you for DUI. A lot of people think that like if they refuse them and refuse everything, we can't arrest them. I've made several arrests for people that refused everything and said almost nothing to me. But I've been able to articulate why I knew they were intoxicated based on their driving and their behavior when I stopped them and what my observations were. And those people a lot of times are very uncooperative. And a judge even agrees with me when I go to get a search warrant for their blood and agrees that I have probable cause for that arrest and agrees to allow me to take their blood for, testing. But when we look at those tests, there's clues that we're expected to look for. So there's 3 clues for the eye test, there's 8 clues for the walk and turn test, and there's 4 clues for the one leg stand test. And there's not like, oh, we only saw 2 clues, so they passed. And okay, the moment we have 3, like there's not like a line where you pass or fail. You can have someone who is like a conditioned alcoholic that's at a 0.3 or above, and they can do really good on the walk and turn and the one leg stand test. The eye test is scientific. You're going to fail that regardless. You can't train for it. It's going to have the same effect on anyone no matter what. So it's always the best indicator. I almost always I feel confident, or I know after I do the eye test if they agree to it. After I do that eye test, I already know in that moment if they're going to jail or not. That's how confident I am with the results from that test. From my training experience and what I know about the science behind it, because you can't fake it. It's just a reaction your body has to alcohol. Um, so we take in everything we have, and it not being a pass or fail, people think they pass it or fail it. Um, there's not like a specific score. It's not like a grading rubric that we have. We're just looking for all of the different clues. And the moment we have enough of those clues where we're like, okay, I have probable cause now that they are driving while intoxicated or driving under the influence, we go ahead and we know we're confident to make that arrest. Now, just because we reach that threshold, we'll still keep looking for more clues because we want to make the best decision possible. So we'll still continue the tests after that. Even once I know after I do the eye test, I still continue with the rest of the tests because I want as much evidence as possible to support my case, if that makes sense. But yeah, so it's unique. And I see Nacho Cast actually asked a great question. Have you ever suspected someone of DUI and it turned out they were 100% sober, just a weirdo? Yes, it's happened one time. I was in field training, and my field training officer was like, I see what you think is happening, because I thought they were high on drugs. I was like, yeah, this is all my. They got in a collision, and that's why we were there. And I was like, yeah, they're talking crazy. They're saying all these things, and he had actually had interactions with that person before, and he had said, no, 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 I see what you're saying, but I just didn't have the experience at that time. Plus, I didn't know that person. The officer was like, this is like their baseline. This is normal for them. He's like, you don't have it. I was like, okay, perfect. And he wasn't upset with me. He was like, having the information you had, he was like, you were making a good decision. He's like, it just, you didn't have it. And he's just like, that's why I'm here, is to help you learn a little bit more. And he's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it for this guy. So that's the only one though. But
So going back to the test there, I know that it's the horizontal gaze and nystagmus test. One of the key indicators that you're looking for is in the eyes that there's a kind of judder when looking from side to side. Is that correct?
yeah, so the eyes typically, if you don't have any alcohol in your system, they will go back and forth smoothly like this. But the moment you have like just a little bit, like the moment you're out, even just a little bit, they'll do just a little bit, and it gets more pronounced. Like the more alcohol you have on board, the more pronounced that is. Which um, that's what we call lack of smooth pursuit. That's what that clue is called. And so we check it, and the eyes will, and they'll kind of do that. But a normal person that's sober, their eyes will track equally, and that kind of just is an indicator to say, hey, yes, there's alcohol in this person. It can also mean some other things. Certain drugs can mimic some of the things that the alcohol does as well. Excuse me. But if they smell like alcohol and you see that, that's a pretty good. We're looking at a DUI for alcohol. And then the next one is we take the pen and we go all the way out to the side and we hold it at the extent of their vision for 4 seconds. And after 4 seconds, if their eyes are still doing like this little, like kind of jerking motion, what that means for us is they're probably close to a point oh 0.08 or over a point oh 0.08. That's kind of the next indicator there. I think I've only had one person that had that out at the edge, like which is we call that distinct and sustained nystagmus is the term for it. I've only had one person that had that that wasn't over a point oh 0.08. And then the last one we look for is we go from here to about here, and we take 4 seconds to do that. And if the eye starts to shake really badly, like we saw at the distinct and sustained nystagmus, if it starts to do that before we hit that, that means that there's a lot. It's a good indicator of how much alcohol is on board. The sooner that happens, the higher they are. Like if they're like a point 0.2 or a point 0.3, we'll see it like right here, which
Oh
is
wow.
insane. And then if they're like a point oh 0.08 to a point 1.2, we'll see it more out here, but we'll start to see it still.
Wow. The more you know.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the other kind of key indicators that I've observed and I've heard from others is that how well you follow instructions,
Yes. So
especially like with the walk and turn and the foot raise and things like that.
yeah. So those tests are designed. They're designed. It has less to do with your balance. People think it's strictly about balance. It's most of what I'm looking for is your ability to follow instructions. Um, because the really big reason why you can't drive and drink is because driving is a complicated task that requires you to switch between different tasks and remember a lot of things all at once. And so if you're unable to do that, or unable to just remember, if I give you, I have a test that you're going to do and it has, 7 or 8 different instructions that you have to remember. If you can't remember all those, you definitely shouldn't be driving a car. And obviously, we know people are nervous and stuff like that. So if you forget one thing, like it's not like if you make a mistake on the test, you automatically like, oh, you failed, you're going to jail. Like, no, again, that's why it's a totality of the circumstances. We're looking at everything that we're seeing. Um, but yeah, a lot of people they just can't follow the instructions, and that's the big thing for us. Because a lot of people that are between point oh 0.08 and point 0.12, their balance, especially if they drink often or regularly, their balance isn't that far off, but their cognitive abilities are severely impaired even at that point. if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Uh, Ken Adlam asks, has Farmer Cop come across people with international driver's licenses?
Yes, yes, I have quite a few people. It's really entertaining because sometimes they don't pull over for you because wherever they're from, the police sometimes, like some countries, the police just have their lights on at all times and it means nothing. And they know to pull over when they turn the siren on. So sometimes, like, if I have someone that doesn't pull over right away, I turn the siren on, and a lot of times that gets them to pull over. It's really interesting in Washington. If you have an international driver's license that's valid from any country, they don't care. You're allowed to come to Washington and drive legally in Washington for a year on that license. And there's no training required. You could have never driven in the US before, and you're allowed to legally drive in Washington on the international license. There's not like even an online course for it. Like I had one person I pulled over, they ran a stop sign and were speeding and were weaving in the lanes. And I stopped them and they were the nicest person. They just had no idea that you had to stay in your lane. They didn't know what a stop sign was and they didn't know what a speed limit was. And so I like, okay, I taught them what those were and I was like, all right, while we're here, have you heard of a red light? And they're like, no. And I was like, all right, we're going to walk through that. And so like, I just took it as an opportunity. I spent 30 minutes on the side of the road just doing a driving class because they didn't do anything. I mean, other than their traffic violations, it wasn't illegal for them to drive. Um, and so it was just, and so like part of that scares me. I wish there was like a class or something, you know? So like, it's that part is a little bit crazy, but yeah, other than that, yeah, there's no regulations on it.
Let's see. Got one last question here from the Tennessee Farmer. Tennessee Farmer, thank you so much for your question. Says, have been creating content for a little under a year. Any advice for me?
Um, well, I don't know of your channel specifically, but I would say keep doing what you're doing. Like if you don't, I mean, just that advice I gave earlier for like starting out, I would still say that advice is pretty valid. And also Tennessee Farmer, I will offer you this too. If you friend me on Discord and send me a message, I'll eventually get back to you. Sometimes I'm a little slow to get back to Discord messages, but if you have questions, like feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out.
Okay, and Farmer Groot, thank you for your question. Says, so what do you do with people driving drunk? Driving drunk, driving a wheelchair van. I drive a handicap van with no mobility. What do you do in a situation? How do you transport them?
Great question. The transport would be the hardest part. We could still do the eye test would still work great. That's one if you can't like if you have limited mobility and you can't do the other tests, like we can still do the eye test and obviously the breath test will still work. So we can still get evidence and stuff like that. Transporting would be very difficult. Um, I haven't come across that yet. I feel like most people I've met in wheelchairs are generally very nice and don't break the law. Um, I think that would be one that I would. Well, I'm sure we could figure it out, but that'd be one I would love to call my sergeant and ask him what he thought about it. But my guess is we would probably just have to help you into the back of the police car, and we would probably just put your wheelchair in the back of our squad. Well, we drive SUVs, put it in the back of the SUV or do something, and take you to jail that way. Or we would. I mean, if we for DUI, we'd have to take you to the station and do certain things, like certain process that we're required by law to do. But after those, we'd probably like if you did something else that was not didn't require us to take you to jail, we would probably just not take you to jail just to avoid the hassle. Or even better, if we can't figure out a way to transport you, we're gonna wake up our lovely friends at the fire department to come figure out a way to move you.
Gotcha, gotcha. And something I missed from earlier, Rail Fanning Jonah with 10 gifted memberships. Jonah, thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it. And Lonnie Johansson with a new Tier 2 membership. Thank you, Lonnie, so very much. And now I think it is time to start wrapping things up and go into our final segment called That's a Silage Wrap. So, can you tell us, do you have any future plans or projects for your channels?
Um, I'm excited to eventually start a start from scratch series where I build up a farm kind of like I talked about on a nothing map. But other than that, I really don't have like any specific plans for the channel. That's kind of the only series in the back of my head that I know I'm going to do at some point going forward.
Gotcha. And can you tell us again where we can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at. I do have a Facebook page, but like I don't ever check it, so that's probably not the best place. I think I might still have a Twitter, but I also don't check that, so don't go there. I do have a Discord. You can reach me there usually, but the best place to find me is on my YouTube channels. I have obviously my main channel is Farmer Cop. My secondary channel is Gamer Cop.
Excellent. Well, Farmer Cop, I want to thank you so very, very much for coming out here tonight, hanging out with us, and doing this interview. I had an absolute blast. This was a once in a lifetime experience for me. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, no, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me on here and having me be part of your channel. I've had a lot of fun talking with you and chatting with everyone. So this has been equally good for me. So thank you.
Well, like I said, it was an absolute pleasure to chat with you here tonight. And this is the portion of the chat where I turn to the audience and say, if you enjoyed all this, and you want to see more, go ahead and give me your suggestions. Let me know who is that you would like me to invite onto the channel to be able to do an interview similar to what we did here tonight. Obviously, I don't know every single person out there, so it's one of those that I turn to everybody out in the audience there to kind of, help guide me as to the individuals that are out there. No channel too big, no channel too small. I will talk to anybody and everybody. The only exception to that is I require that people be over the age of 18. That's just a rule that I have just for a protection for myself and the channel. And I will require verification if I'm not 100% certain. So again, if you have your suggestions, go ahead and reach out to any one of my socials there. Listen in the description, and I will do my best to get them on the show. All that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed it here tonight. I know I sure as did. If you did, please show me by liking, sharing, subscribing, following, commenting, doing all the things. The algorithms enjoy you doing. The shows you're engaged with this channel, enjoying the content. And that being said, I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Take care. Hey, Farmer Cop, can you hang on just 1 second until after the outro, and I'll catch you on the other side?
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, everyone.